Then the show on again a Facebook. More show is in that Bongo. Oh, yes. Talotonya got to Nalo. Oh, Namama Nungo Pinji. Oh, yeah. Kaya Jome Boro in Chaman.
Unasikiliza Samburu Finest Show.
Marangu say no number veneta. Mitile na gadal muran. Yeyo, muduge do reta. Yeyo, mikido ulangu dugai. Yeyo, dokuro daranya inao. Yeyo, hey mama, hey mama. Mama, hey man, hey 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 mama.
Radio Jangwani, Kanyawani, Radio Jangwani, you are radio city Tatu FM, Gumu Yankaja.
Yesula Yankee Solala, Magilani, Yesula Yankee Solala, Ida Yankee Solala, Magilani, Yesula Yankee Solala, Yankee Solata, Magilani, Yankee Solala, Magilani. Erana sagi jasirael, Imaleki nyagwenka yangai, Jalo sirael, ejo yankai musa, Nashomo odonyo lesinai, Bilevi yangaina, Orage beye levi ninye, Elodu olairo yana saruni, Israel, Isulani jasirael. Jalo maleki, jalo Yankee Solala, jalo Yankee Solala, jalo sirai, jagwanga Yankee Solala, Yankee Solala. Inajedo, yes Yankee Solala kai, Yankee Solala. Diagwanan, yes Yankee Solala, ina Yankee Solala. Magilani kai Yankee Solala, ina ye baba. Magilani, yes Yankee Solala, ina ye. Magilani, yes Yankee Solala, ina Yankee Solala. Magilani, ina Yankee Solala.
Unasikiliza Samburu Finest Show.
Yankee Solala, Eduma kai, Israeli dinao. Iralango, Yaganka Yankee Solala, Yankee Solala, Yadwafarao, Yadlorgankai, Yadworbu, Ishonin Jessiraeli, Garem, Yaganka Yankai, Yalosira, Idaye, Yankee Solala, Yesu, Yadwananu, Baba, Yankaya. Yesura Yankee Solala, Berumi, I got that now. Olegi Yanyi, I never judge it. Yankee Solala, Yesu, Irasi Magilani, Tagaina, Yesura Yankee Solala, Magilani, Yesura Yankee Solala, Magilani, Yesura Yankee Solala. Magilani, Yesura Yankee Solala, ina Yankee Solala, Yesu, ina Yankee Solala, Omangari, Tainelena, Agumo Irmanga de line Tajogi Boy Mindimana Tageyo Yagwanki Sula Irasi Makilan Yangayai Irasi Makilan Iyo Yambo Berumele Nyanyu Yankai Yanki Sula Yanki Sula Yankai Yasura Yanki Sula
Unasikiliza
Yanki Sula Yasura Yanki Sula Yadwan Manga Yasura Yanki Sula Magilani Yasura Yanki Sula Magilani Yasura Yanki Sula Magilani Yasura Yanki Sula Magilani Yesura Yanki Sula Magilani Yesura Yanki Sula Magilani Yesura Yanki Sula Magilani Yesura Yanki Sula Magilani
Radio Jangwani. Kaa nyumbani, zingatia usafi, epuka corona. 106.3 FM. Baragumu ya faraja. Radio Jangwani.
Angayala sayala omono dabali ya mwesi wera ya bayro yangaya Tonyora yogi Oh baba Tonyora yogi baba Tonyora yogi Oh baba rangamula sarile ne yangaya Yes Tonyora yangaya Toni ngori yele shiraka nanduba Yes Tonyora yangaya Yesu jeno lona rafena nyangaya Yesu tanyangaya Ashomo na nuri ya bonyo salabalina Yesu tanyangaya Harigile gile heburubura nano Yesu tanyangaya Trabalia ginara ni baba Yesu Alright, shuling lening mulai kira marina buta na buru rang rashini na buile point2 ni tukuna saine melagini artam kaito mona rangure side woleng uti liburang ko bokna baba shata da mojikiti ingipini kijo Samburu finance show dono bona Wambaz Oleman neslo kijo ingewari na chipa siku ya kuchapa kazi majilo juta maicho gracia tukuna sa yampar keje kake kore yene ja korne kwena ikrunyonka ina shamke seba show yo na long ekumo dongana klo yuno dona kwari kake kodangara kimba na baba shana ku itidwa ne je kake kore yelo to dua turnyonka ina shibo tuduka tukuna sa yampar keje na kaitu muno leng maria mari tunguri side woleng tada mojikiti live regele Facebook ashuri do Jangwani na boile point2 FM tunubusi yako YouTube at Radio Jangwani na boile point2 FM tunubusi yako Twitter at Jangwani 106 tada mojikiti live to Go Africa live ya kiye ikirashuni Radio Jangwani na boile point2 FM apo kutuma show na bota na boto kuna sa yampare keje kake kaitu moni kijore chite kwa shuni kijoni nyemare ro nuto majila jo ongai diba sana gloli great mundu kuna sa yampare keje kake ndejungu wari ana seku mwana apo kutuma show na bota na bo great shule nye James Selembo single jiruti ana tonyorwa kake ngai nesula kijo nkewari na asisi ai ni makijere jolo se diba sana igras nikire jo are tungona leme gran ja asisi ai kiji tuangar no tungana ko ngai kiji mongo anta sibal mongo leme gras se una sa yampare kiji korentai na ngai diba sana sheju Samburu mongo ko mongo ina le tungana rapuni nyilcho no ile rotal keni iti barabarasion iti ya ngeranda iti kamanika jo kisira diba sana itu mbar tanah yul tungan gras ne jera ke super mongo ko banal bajile kamera ni julo ju ibu dunya pa shinga jar bulchoni no ni nyelo ipelura kake tikimbar joki enyo de basana bare nyankera ne tikimbar joki ajide basana manyesiom tanah wara marjule ke sigre le melio ne tikimbar shira joki kitumodi basa ne sia ke jalo mongo ita ke super aye
Alright, ashe oleng kaito muntu ngude sida oleng nikijo nkewari na shiba. Na kaiti braki nkewari tungude sida oleng tu ngirashoni na boile mpuntu ni tukuna sayam pare kijitada majuki tika live tikile Facebook. Kure siaki lora kiliko itarau pukutumasho na bota na boka ke kadonjela ngura kile Facebook aju wako sawa na ada majuka ikuja tijungu pokoto ngipindi. Aronye Daniel Luriule kuchola jitu tu nikiwa Machakos. Ashe oleng le barsore Daniel jitu following live from Kornaibor. Ashe oleng dongole Kornaibor tada majukore inkolongi Jumapili na kiti ndai. Aro kini soipia ujamaa amepotea sana watching live from Ruaraka Thika Road Sakaria soipia tubonge Tuesday. Ashe oleng kwanza kabisa tushabonga ikijo hashtag siku ya kuchapa kazi majira jolo city pasana igras. Samson Modone jitu watching live from Kitobor Samburu County kijua my brother Oleman kaite jungu ja kulo Maria. Ejo tungono pokile Kitobor Stella Mimo Maria. Ashe oleng ada mujikutu mongaranye na Stella Mimo all the way kutoka Samburu County nesulake mansion nikijo Losugo. Arosi Helen Keraitu Samson Olmodone jeta palikita lo singulo ngai oranyedi basana lo singulo side oleng keje tuangarne James Selembo all the way kutoka Olkejiado County. Adan kiliwai ajo hello my brother, kindly say hi to my wife Pina Galgidele nikiwa hapa Dukana. Ajo I ask all members to pray for peace in our county. Ashe oleng arosinye Stephen Ambere jitu hi Oleman getting you loud and clear nikiwa Kisimu, say hi to all Kituruni people. Ashe oleng kama kawa donye John Kele Suda jitu jambo Mr. Oleman ojonye wishing live from Mayu hapa kazi tu bro najo karoge sorry karero kala ningo poke leri du jangwani. Ashe oleng Maria Maritunguri side oleng ke grabo du kuna sayam pare ke jines lo ke jore shete ku ashuni ke jo ninye Maria no tuna majilo jo ngai di basana legra na karero ku kuna sayam pare ke jero ku jo tungona na ku boito te ku ya to kuna sayam pare ke je agre do ka shulo singuru jiro tiana e kenta juro sina.
Yesu indayona no rosina. Selembo balosi. Yesu indayona rosina. Yesu indayona lava. Injobo bagina. Elo nenyororo na. Yana siria ngaganya. Nada morki yolai mai, nada musina lai mai, nagila nanora. Ena lorere ranyare, kaya na biri namu. Nada majo gincholo ilo, onyo ni raje urukumu. Yesu ginja mugare, injona neweji na shurie, kengare kiroga. Kinjona neki kombenkare. Iye Yesu, aseguro jero iriyo. Asigume no Solomon, asigume leva shumara. Amusina no daulai. Yesu, Yesu, Yesu. Yesu, inaya rosina. Yesu, inaya nalawa.
Kinjo poko kelalanganyit. Alright, ashe oleng kikira putu kwetu kuna sayam pare keje kajuka nang siya kesileke ngura tungono glogrenja tumjote rekile radio. Matidu ngosaje kejua di basana di nyaliburu na gira manya kake tulika kaju kejua di basana albashi nodroti nyamanyisho ni manya. Radio Jangwani hello. Hello Radio Jangwani. Sawa shia da mwishu nyedengedene melagwa. Radio Jangwani hello.
Oleman.
Subade oleng. Kira subari.
Nantana itu.
Itu oleng ni rimalasin.
So nangka yang nasi tanah suai.
Ina.
Jadi mulai juga tanah suai juga juran kerjakan kaya oleng ni kibulku. Nangka yang itu oleng.
Ina.
Kaya gana rawa cerita mana.
Aja.
Saya kita mama mungkin nena bagai mayu rumbu di nasamu. Nara mama Brian.
Ina.
La Sofia lado lokutas.
Okay.
Mama Yudi.
Ina.
Nimempata sana. Anjima.
Ina.
Ngiri pana jiunte.
Okay.
Ada marang foga bagana bagata mama Emily. Oro pia la casa.
Aja.
Era ko ma ko ni ko na ba ko la mang ko nan di na cuma sa ka cham ni mo mo dei. Ini ane tu mancing ada sangkang gulu na sangkang osu.
Ina.
Ota sa track system ol kasi sa sabal kasi dan kan no. Na kamu na yang ko ta ego ba ka ta yang aje ko na ka ta.
Ina.
Por ngumu sa ke. So na yang na kan ta pa ro yo wan. Den.
Showling ne di malasin. Alright, showling. Maria Marina bota na bona di malasin eti mancho le samis ne solo ki mancho ne kijo komponi. Sawa showling nguru sita bado kiliko kadolo nye lobuji tu niko ndani ya Samburu Finance Show na Wambaz Oleman ndani ya mitabendi ya 106.3 FM. Mimi ni shabiki sugu Alkano kutoka Merile. Showling Alkano utima ncho Merile. Leo tunasema ni siku ya kuchapa kazi. Sijui unachapa kazi ukiwa maeneo gani? Najolobokejo Wambaz siraki sidai kutia Jane Pamela Stella Maria Karosis wangu na Disore tu pia mamu wangu akiwa home African Lady akiwa Albaro ka Showling. Najoloboso pole mana hupu kopoa nantalino areroki mama Natacha na Mira siku Hamza mamangu. Najongura na kaka lobole nye Laisa Boy Sibara. Showling Ridu Jangwani lo. Hello Ridu Jangwani.
Oleman.
Subade Woleng.
Ira ka subadi?
Ikira side Woleng.
Amranya ikutan anda gibindi.
Kai tu mono leng elchabiki ngejuk.
Wala na ka subadi?
Ikira side Woleng kake kayu na juro ajonga di basa na elchabiki ngejuk.
Kaya mwana na ko limai. Ela bati. Namanya ndikirta na bata na bo. Ngai mwina jura uli.
Uli. Showling kai tu mono.
Kayo kana ra nguru ngana.
Oro kijo tona nono.
Era ra kita yeke.
Aranga mai dunguri sidai.
Mala sumadi. Amra jam kana shai.
Dina.
Era ra ku chibo ka bagata. Era ra ku libu ba era ile na ga ide adua.
Ina.
Ne. Era ra kita ngon jilo andal baro.
Okay.
Ngodo Maria.
Aja.
Era ra kita ke baro bo kildinga yatte kampoe.
Sawa.
Ngodo le seye ngai na na ngon ngurgo na njenisi.
Okay. Showling Maria.
Era ra bo ki ora ku chibo la garre.
Sawa.
Showling. Kamu kita mayana ngai.
Showling tumonda masidai.
Ngodo go siki ngodo.
Sawa.
Ngula mrane di mogwa mardi. Na gila la baji no. Lega jin mai gai. Modal mai gai dana.
Sawa.
Mai da morida to no bam gajimu na gizinda ni do na chage yi.
Showling.
Alright. Lega shere di maro gai gai raro.
Sawa. Alright, showling tumonda masidai mama malaika kupoito tukwetu kuna sa yambare keje na imada keni onnom tada maju kijuri shide kwa shuni kijoni nyemare unutuna majiro jonga idiba sana kulole grade jungi pinde Redu Jangwani lo.
Oleman.
Supa de Woleng mama Lucas. Okay. Hello Redu. Hello.
Na supa dogi.
Ikira supari.
Kira bagi yo supadi.
Haya.
Me dogna ya.
Ina.
Era na ye de je.
Aranga mo irunguri sidai.
Era ndo mana bagari de Jangwani. Mandonia. Ai rumasi.
Ina.
Asmato.
Era grande bagum gai menai bagoleng.
Woleng ni jito ngewari na asise majira jolo se grass.
Kajara kala na dugudo nangan Oleman.
Sawa Woleng mama Lucas.
Agine megata baginchan.
Okay.
Eta bagaido yo suwa.
Sawa. Kaju kashaka kuna na marajo na tena.
Na.
Sawa.
Ayya dumona masadai.
Alright, Woleng mama Lucas kigira marina bota na bo ikijitwa kire shere kwe na dalo bo jito Mambo Oleman, ningependa kugotea mama Pasikali na mama Nabulu akiwa Karare pamoja na Chapa Logol. Mimi ni Regina nikiwa Laisami. Sashu Oleng Regina. Ridu Jangwani, hello Ridu Jangwani. Okay, tala maridu tapasali batu matumo rungudi side Oleng rekuna sayam pare kita mo jikita jonto jengwari ana seko ngwana. Ridu Jangwani, hello. Sawa sawa she. Alright, ashu Oleng leni ngulai kajo kalau siakan break kidogo kurba shughuli nyingi ya mari na buta na boka ke kai ngwa singulu side lenye Susan Moirana Maiboro yu. Alright, shiwoleng leni ngule kikiraga tumlenye Susan Moirana rukuna saine maldegeni onnom osani kubuna tumgurigelo montudwa saisir kamilina leni ngule kurekera na shulu munlo granja basho na oyuna engitu na bo yirudiana Esther Wanjiru gatumina lagna o senete leda maulekina ngalfuni na bai piari abo kepata ngarakera matere wankere nara de nobolo senete lana rok yirudi ana seneta ledama olekina na kurisia ko jine ja eluna rais Uhuru Kenyatta airirio lo show dara imbunge poke lo show dara saisire endama na kurisia kultur la IBC na wagrananja aitu yari tangarake yang kamati na bona na diglanje nkigwana na kojo elo karanire shike na inkuru na ututala langal finari utikita mari na kurisia ko yine ja etrena elebo entomono kenyenye na mitwata tenbo ngera ongwana ata county ekirinyaga na kajukuri jene ja karoto shulu munaka tundurubolo gravacho tisisi ongopo na longa nesula kingasinyo shule Kenya ana marabaka county ya Marsabit na leni ngole kurake tinubuna tumgurugulu montondrobo ka mono maria marina bota na botu tangrashoni na William point ni ndokuna sayam parike jene mal arjinga saisire kamili pukutu magara yulajo agwadi basana bana gra apotu kuyana tadamo jonda rikini osoma lapale tumuno bo lari lankal funari utikida mari mputi inkarnate ju Wambaz Oleman na leni ngole kure na kelu munlo graba shu kure lubulo enyi tutulo shule Kenya jiruti ana Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta na uribro na nyeputu mato airudi na kelo show tubunge na ke elo shule Kenya sai isir onusu na kurna kelo rais uribro na nyeputu mariri lo shule Kenya tangara kemba na tapashto ni sulak siangulungi na kena tutulo shule Kenya tunubusi ya kolmete ya padle kuruna watapashwa na ke tunubusi ya kwamba kumo na grana nje agranya lutoi makita ngara ke lari langal finade utikida mare lutubri najo eluna karanolo na kenkura dokuya tutwa lwari na kurna ke mbai na tuwani na uribri na kulubungu labaya ibna bo to muno ngwana tanubusi akol kulubungu labaya ibongo to muno ile na ke meshomo nje ne bunge tanubusi akol bunge lo barinyika jonto munisir woisire na ke merjinga nje ne kigwana na kene balinyika jo elotu na ke lubulo ya nyituto shule Kenya jiruti ana rais Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta na ka aidilu muni ana second kiroret na kana ipro lo shule Kenya na kurisa katiba yu na Kenya rais lelo shule Kenya meiti report na kana ipro na Kenya kiroret tine bunge oisulusia kama maendeleo toto lo shule Kenya mbai na bona joninje ujiri saka be shuru ningiroret na ipro na ke lupulusin lenkule lo shutini wapapasha na kurisia kamba ina bona ipiru na ulutu na raisa maki mba ungwa na ipiru serikali tenebusia kwamba nairibdu nanye meimaki nisulaki mbaa naake elobo naake lotunye makajo elo nakaranea naake rikore ale osho le Kenyatta namajo kore nye rais Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta na elotu nakarane ishunye reshetanye ana rais lele osho le Kenya na kore mbaa nagira nye aimaki naa olusi ake aimaki mbaa naipiru naake enkisuma tenebusia kwamba naipiru naake uchumi ale osho le Kenya mbae nabo naimakita ninche ajo atodoyie naapa losho anaa si uchumi tiatua ele osho le Kenya tenkaraki mbaa nagira ninche aimaa nisulaki sii enyamalo naake nkolong'i natapaashitua. Na olainining'oni lai kore sii tenaiteng'olo kore kulie omon logira apaashu naa kore olturrur obo oitasheki naake nkura tiatua olosho le Kenya yioloti anaa IEBC naa oitetua naa ninche ate tiatua nkamati nabo nagira apa ninche ajo otii naa tayari aipanga naake enkura nalotu tolari le 2022 naa kore sii ake oyia nejia kore naa olobo oimu lobo oloriko naake otii lorika naake lelo turrur la IEBC yioloti anaa Wafula Chebukati naa ojo naa ninche eya naa ninche erishata peetum ninche naake naa ejo ninche eorro naa erishata nabo peetum naake aitayu ate tenkaraki mbaa naipiru naake ewoshoto ekura olari le 2022 naa kore naake tombaa naimaka ninche ilo katibui naake lorikoo ninche mbaa naipiru turrur oitasheki ewoshoto ekura tiatua olosho le Kenya yioloti anaa IEBC naa otii naa ninche otii tayari peetum naa ninche aitasheki kura tonkoitoi naishia neisulaki sii ninche metii naake lomoni opaashu ashu duo mpurrore naa kore naake lomoni loishoro lobo naake katibui oitasheki mbaa eseriani tiatua losho yioloti anaa Karanja Kibicho naake nkewarie natulusoyie ogira naa ninye aut olturrur le IEBC ojo kore mbaa nagira ninche aas naa ejo ninye elo naakata naaku meishia tenkoitoi sidai oleng embae nabo najo ninche motii naa tayari peetum ninche atang'amai nkura nalotu tolari le 2022 naa ojo sii ake ninche kore mbaa natiu enaa nena naa oyiari naake peeyai erishata naishori enkiroshi tiatua ale osho le Kenya naa kore naake ilo yioloti anaa Chebukati otejo ninche kore ilo turrur naa metii naa ninche tayari peetum aturubare mbaa nagira naake nkumeshu ajoki tenkaraki ojo ninche kore olturrur le IEBC naa otii naa ninche tayari peetum naa ninche atorikoi mbaa naitasheki kura lari le 2022 kake ojo ninche otii naa tayari maate kake megira anyorraa mbaa nagira apaashu neisulaki sii nkolong'i lomoni naake logira larikok aisho tiatua ale osho le Kenya. Naa kore naake nkiguana nabo natejo ninche oyiari peejing'i naa ogira naake apisani le serkali naake arikoo tenebo sii ake oljaji kitok yioloti anaa Martha Koome tenebo naake olministai oitasheki mbaa eseriani tiatua olosho yioloti anaa Daktari Fred Matiang'i tenebo sii ake lobo lorikoo ninche mbaa eropiyiani tiatua olosho yioloti anaa Ukur Yatani Kanacho tenebo naake lobo yioloti anaa Joe Mucheru loitasheki ninye mbaa ICT tiatua olosho. Naa kore sii ake ina rishata otejoki naapa kore ewiki nalotuta naa eyiari naake peing'uraa ninche etejo naapa olturrur obo yioloti anaa UDA tiatua olosho le Kenya naa megira ninche anyorraa mbaa naake nagira ninche atum naboishu tenebo naake lobo oitasheki mbaa eseriani yioloti anaa Fred Matiang'i tenebo sii ake olboitie lenye Joe Mucheru tenebo sii ake irkulie loogira ninche anyorraa ejo ninche kore naake lelo ministani naa egira naa ninche anyorraa mbaa esiasa mbae nabo natuuto apa losho le Kenya ajo egira naa ninche ayieki lobo yioloti anaa arikoni lorkiama le ODM yioloti anaa Raila Odinga nkura nalotu tolari le 2022 naa kore sii ake tina rishata otejo naake olturrur le UDA megira ninche anyorraa oljaji kitok tiatua olosho yioloti anaa Martha Koome naa kejo ninche oyiari naa peitie ninye koon tiatua ilo turrur oitasheki mbaa ekura tiatua losho le Kenya tadamu ajo kore ilo turrur naa IEBC naa otejo apa ilo turrur le UDA megira ninche anyorraa naa tenelo oljaji kitok negira ninye atii tenebo naake olelo tung'anak loitasheki nkura nalotu tolari le 2022 naa olainining'oni lai kore sii ake tenaitung'oo lelo ayiok kake naisho irkulie naake loogira apaashu neisulaki naake ogira ninche aing'ua kaunti e Samburu naa kore naake women rep nabo e Samburu yioloti anaa Maison Leshomo naa ogira naa ninye aut serkali tombaa nagira apaashu neisulaki sii ake mbae nabo naitarasaki naake ndaiki tina luboto ejo ninye kore kaunti e Samburu naa ogira naa atum nyamalo tenkaraki otumo iltung'anak nkolong'i napapaasha. Naa kore naa ogira ninye aitai kulo omoni otejo ninche kore ropiyiani naabaya naa milioni 1.9 naa ejo ninche ewoshituo naapa serkali aisho naake nkera naabaya nkera 140 naake sukuuli tina luboto naa etejo naake Maison kore inkera kumok naa ogira ninche naake meshuko sukuuli tenkaraki nyamalo nisulaki siake mbaa natapaasho naake lameyu ogolotu ina kaunti ya Samburu. Na otopona siake ninche kulo omoni ajo kore nkera naagira naake emepuo sukuul tenkaraki etala ninche ropiyiani esukuul naa ogira naa ninye aut tenkaraki ejo ninye etalakine naa nkera ashomo sukuuli tenkaraki megira aata ropiyiani naapoyie ninche sukuul. Na embae nabo naimaka ninche ajo meyieri naake peetii nkera nkang'itie tenkaraki nyamalo naagira ninche aimaki tenkaraki lomoni oipiru ropiyiani. Na etopona siake maison kulo omoni ade naa pulotu olturrur obo lenkanisani tolosho yioloti enaa KCCB naake tolosho ajo naa ninye oyieri naake peing'urari mbaa naagira nkera aimaa neisulaki sii nkera neitu eshuko sukuuli tenkaraki lomoni oipiru ropiyiani. Na otua sii ninche irparakuo leina manyisho ajo eyieri naake peetii ninche naake reto neisulaki siake reto oondaiki naake tenkaraki mbaa naagira nkumeshu aimaa neisulaki siake lameyu otapaashe teina kaunti e Samburu. Na ore ninche oitita naa ninche lomoni ajo kore serkali naa oyieri naa peetii ninche reto oondaiki naake oltung'anak lemegira ninche logira ninche aimaa nyamalo tiatua losho le Kenya. Na ejo naa ninche kore apa peeng'asu naake losho le Kenya oata ninye larin onom oisiet ade naa peetum losho le Kenya naake lomoni oipiru naake nkitoria naa ejo ninche oyieri naake peetum ninche lomoni oishaa neisulaki siake ogira ninche aasaya iltung'anak loogira aimaa nyamalo tiatua losho tenkaraki embae nabo natapaashwa neisulaki lameyu otagolo. Na laining'ok lai kore siake tenaitung'ua lelo ayiok ake naishoo kulie omoni naake loipiru nkaunti nabo e Kirinyaga. Na kore naake elee obo otolimuo ake ajo oyeita naa ninche ilpilisi naake peitabaya naake ina kitashoni olpilisi natii kaunti e Kirinyaga are naa peibelekenyeki aajo oideki naa ninye enkishui naake entomononi enye tenebo onkera ong'uan. Na kore naake ele obo loji chief tena luboto e Rukenya yioloti enaa Rukenya tena luboto e Rukenya oltung'ani obo yioloti enaa Kenneth Murimi. Na ojo naa ninche kore naake seseni loltung'anak naake loideki enkishui naa oitabayieki naa nkaji napiki ilmeneng'a ade naa peibelekenyeki aajo kore naake jeraha natumo iltung'anak naa etipika naa lolee naake lelo tung'anak jeraha enkueshi. Na kore naa ilo yioloti enaa Paul Njuki oibelekenyeki aajo oata magai kitok oleng naa oibelekenyeki aajo ootiki naa ayia naake ilpilisi enjurrore peetum aibalunye aajo enyori apa sana naitarasaka naake metara iltung'anak ong'uan embae nabo naibelekenyeki aajo etara naa nkitok tenebo onkera enyenye ong'uan. Na kore naake ogira naake olkamandai leina luboto e kaunti kiti e Kirinyaga yioloti enaa Githugi Anthony Mbogo naa ore ninche kore ilo yioloti enaa Paul Njuki naa ogira naa ninye aideki enkitok enye yioloti enaa Millicent Muthoni naibelekenyeki aajo oata larin ntomoni isiet tenebo siake onkera enye nkera enye Nelly Wawira naibelekenyeki aajo oata larin tomon okuni tenebo siake Gift Bundi naibelekenyeki aajo oata larin sapa tenebo siake Shiremith Wambui naibelekenyeki aajo oata larin imiet tenebo siake Clifton Njuki naibelekenyeki aajo oata maga nabo. Na kore siake ilo lee naa oibelekenyeki aajo oideki naa ninye enkishui loltung'anak pookin laipotoka nkitok enye tenebo siake onkera ong'uan. Na kore naake ilo lee naa orripito naa meitabari nkiteshoni olpilisi naake etejo ninye olkamandai lolpilisi ejo naa ninche oyieri naa peibung'i ilo neitabari naake jela tenkaraki embae nabo naake naibelekenyeki aajo eewua naa nyamalo ade naa peibelekenyeki aajo oata naa ninye olbiasharai naake lolbanki teina luboto e Kirinyaga. Na kore siake ilpilisi naa ore ninche otumo naake ilo oata ninye mbaa naake e arrabal ade peibelekenyeki aajo orripitoi naa peitabari ninche naake nkiteshoni olpilisi embae nabo naibala ninche aajo orripito naake ilo tung'ani metumi tenkaraki embae nabo natejo ninche etii naa ilo tung'ani naake aisudori toonkang' enye. Na kore naake seseni loltung'anak naa oitabayieki naa sipitali nabo e Kerugoya natii ina kaunti e Kirinyaga. Na etejo naa ilpilisi otii naa tiyari peetum ataas njurrore ateyiai naa ilo tung'ani loibelekenyeki aajo otara naa ninche nkera ong'uan tenebo siake onkitok enye naibelekenyeki aajo oata larin ntomoni isiet. Na laining'ok lai kore siake tenaitung'ua lelo ayiok ake naitalang' ilpilisi ashu naake kulie omoni loogira apaashu tiatua seuseu enkop nalulung'a neisulaki ng'asunye olosho le Kenya kegira airiamari nabo ta nabo tiatua nkiteshoni nabo ile mpoint uni tekuna saai naima ildaikani tomon obo. Na kore naake ilo obo oitasheki mbaa e biotisho esesen tiatua olosho le Kenya yioloti enaa Ministai Mutahi Kagwe naa oipotuo naa ninche enkiguran nabo naa aajo oyieri naa peetii nkirorete naake embae nabo naibelekenyeki aajo oyieri naake piibori ilmeitai le corona teneng'amata nerripido ajo epuo naa iltung'anak neng'amaa sikukuu nabo e Christmas. Naa kore naa ogira ninye aiteru ogira ninye aitai enkiroret lo ministai yioloti enaa Mutahi Kagwe naa ejo ninye oiteyia naake lomoni naake aut naake olosho le Kenya aajo oyieu naa peibooyo ninche ilmeitai le corona loibalunyeki aajo ogira naa atasari tiatua ele osho. Naa kore naake ina kamati nabo naipotoki yioloti enaa NERC naa oiteyioki naa apa ina kamati lari lewaare lari le 2020 naake ade pelotu ninye aut naake serikali ajo eyieu naa peyieri enkoitoi naiboorieki ele meitai le corona logira atasari tiatua olosho le Kenya naake ena naimaka ilministai oitasheki imbaa e biotisho tiatua olosho. Na kore naake siake ina mkutano naa orripitoi naake metapaashu tiatua mpirot waare apa natulusoyie ade naa pelotu nabo yioloti enaa Susan Mochache ojo naa ninye oyieu naake peitaini mpango nabo naake nagirai autu irparakuo tiatua olosho le Kenya peetum naa ninche aibooi ele meitai le corona tenkaraki sikukuu nabo narripito ninche e Christmas. Naa kore naake etiu nejia orripitoi naa ajo etapaashotoki naake likae meitai ng'ejuk tiatua naake loshon opaasha yioloti enaa Omicron naake embae nabo naibala ninche aajo elotu naake ele osho le Kenya. Naa olainining'oni lai kore siake ilo kesi naa oitabayieki naake ninye mahakama e Mombasa naake ade pelotu naake lobo oitasheki imbaa e biotisho yioloti enaa Mutahi Kagwe ojo oyieu naake peitaini lomoni naake logira autu iltung'anak peetum aibooi naake imbaa naagira apaashu neisulaki siake ilmeitai ng'ejuk loibalunyeki aajo etarasunye naa aitoki nkae moyian ng'ejuk naa tiatua seuseu enkop pookin nalulung'a. Naa kore siake embae nabo natuuta naake Mutahi Kagwe otejo ninye kore lelo tung'anak naa oyiari naake peeng'asu ninche arrip ate tiatua ntarikini 21 ele apa. Naa kore siake Mbarak Hamid Mbarak naa ojo ninye tenebo siake oljaji obo yioloti enaa John Mativo naa ejo ninche otii naake ninche arubare imbaa naake naiboorieki ilmeitai le corona tiatua olosho le Kenya. Naa kore siake embae nabo natapaasha naa otejo naake ilo ministai oyiari naake peut ninche olosho le Kenya tenebo siake olbiasharani tenebo siake olaasak losipitalini naake peetum ninche aibooi naake ele meitai le corona loibalunyeki aajo otii naa likae meitai obo naake ng'ejuk logira ninye apaashu tiatua ele osho. Naa olainining'oni lai kore siake tenaa iting'olo ayiu aitoki naisho kulie omoni naake logira apaashu tiatua seuseu enkop pookin nalulung'a neisulaki siake aisho naake lomoni loipirta oljaji kitok tiatua ele osho le Kenya. Naa kore naake oljaji kitok naa oiteyia naa ninye enkiroret naake ejo ninye kore embae nabo naake embae nabo naimakaki apa aajo kore olturrur le UDA naa ogira naa autu tenkaraki embae nabo natijing'aka naa ninye olturrur obo oitasheki ewoshoto e kura tiatua olosho le Kenya ashu IEBC. Naa kore naake ina mpango nabo naa ejo ninye metii naa tiyari naake peetum atorikoi enkuran tiatua olari le 2022. Naa kore naake embarua nabo naigero ninye aigeroki olkatibui obo naake logira arikoo ilo turrur le UDA yioloti enaa Veronica Maina Koome naa otejo ninye kore embae nabo naa tenebo siake iltung'anak kituak naake loogira ninche arikoo naake ina woshoto e kura naa ejo naa ninye metii naa tiyari peetum ninye atang'amai imbaa naipirta naake erupare tiatua olosho le Kenya neisulaki olari le 2022. Naa olainining'oni lai kajo kore ake etiu nejia ayieu ake naitomok ajoki elotu naake Rais Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta naake airorie olosho le Kenya tiatua mbungei pokira tenebo siake mbungei olosho tenebo siake osenetani naake tiatua olosho naake tiatua ena kewarie enkakenya. Naa kore irkulie loogira apaashu naa eyieu naake enkitok nabo yioloti enaa Esther Wanjiru Gatume naake nelak osenetai obo yioloti enaa Senator Ledama naake nkalifuni naabaya iip are tenkaraki embae nabo eramatare enkerai nabo naake naata ilo senetai le Narok yioloti enaa Senator Ledama Ole Kina. Naa olainining'oni lai kajo ina kaitabaki nkutuk olomon tondoropo kore kulo apaashu naitoki aisho tenkoitoi sidai oleng kigira airiamari nabo te nabo tiatua nkitashoni nabo William Point netiu kuna saai neima ildakikani tomon ajo alo break kore paashukunye nikiponu erishata waare ashu nikijo ninye maiparataki mpara lomoni likimpirie tenebo siake onkulikae kake ore ninche iltung'anak loogira ninche airikoo iyiok torrekie le Facebook naa ajo aisum ake lelo kiliku paatum atushukunye kiponu ajing erishata nikijo maiparata. Ara ninye Dan le KC ojito jambo Oleman watching live from Kituruni greeting to all Jangwani fans. Ashe oleng. And also Jacob Nepe ejito hi brother Oleman, good afternoon, show iko juu nagotea mafans wote wa Jangwani, watu wa Songa, pia Joseph Lantari akiwa eneo ya Laisamis na familia yake yote kejo na chapa kazi nikiwa Sarima. Ashe oleng otii Sarima Kenya. And also Kateso ushire ojito salamu iwande nkarkar srangongo mzee Kamusite Abdi Kiyare Julius Layamyam Fatuma Lesrangongo Sabdio Kamusite na watu wote wa Old Road na pia Samuel Alekada anasalimia wafuatao Njeitin Masi Victoria wakiwa Arabal na Mam Sitilan na Mam Lekia wakiwa Old Road na wanajangwani wote ashuwalenga adosinya sakana lekabana ojito jambo Oleman kupata nikiwa maeneo ya Taita Taveta County wasalimia wanasonga na Radio Jangwani kwa jumla ajo tuko pamoja ashuwalenga Maria Marina Butanabo kuna sayenda manai maleka ntumuno saba ajo kalobre kake kaimwe kisingulio na kile nyesa nino bless tunubusi yakol tumuno jisak ar Toriko Yoki Budi ngarna tejo Wambaz Oleman
Zach made it. I say, giri nanu. I say, giri nanu. Baba lango rishumala. Iri sinyangar naino. Be wengi dori ainango. Nana rishumala. Eji malanga yorgeju. Ibera na ibosha dama. Eji era bayo loiri. Nairobi mesi yengoidoi. Another nanu. Engirisi barenye. Another nanu. Olori gidol daulai. Another nanu. Olori gidol daulai. Another nanu. Engirisi barenye. Yangoze gogi baba torigogi deke yangu siwezi torigo yanga ya torigo talanga yori yangoze gogi baba torigogi deke yangu siwezi torigo yanga ya torigo talanga yori
Unasikiliza Samburu Finest Show na Wambaz Oleman.
Sijui kuogelea hata nijifunze mimi kati nitapotelea. Mbona tanichona gwiji na njuga nionyesha kuteka ni kwako Yesu safari niongoza kwenye nuksi nikifika nikange usiniache mwenyewe. Wewe mchuzi na fikra zangu nilinde sichue mwenyewe.
Amumedere yanga yai ninyanga yai gasheba ginonano rabalage madanaba mumolola ole ribanale anodo nanu engirisi badenye anodo nanu olori gidol daulai anodo nanu olori gidol daulai anodo nanu engirisi badenye
Yangoze gogi baba torigogi deke yangu siwezi torigo yanga ya torigo talanga yori yangoze gogi baba torigogi deke yangu siwezi torigo yanga ya torigo talanga yori
irori goloba bono yeyo wanga banaira runyengo irori gormage singalino no de biblia naina beresola Aumoniro ravenga yana torigo gisena no singalino joge marobi go girigiro waisha geno yango yorigiro
oh yeah unyongoza wale wangu wale wamaze mpaka kwa iziku mimi nani nyongoze kwa kikao kikuu niopere kwa jaziri Mungu
gogi baba
torigogi deke yangu siwezi
torigo yanga ya
torigo
talanga yori
yangoze
gogi
baba
torigogi
deke yangu siwezi
torigo yanga ya
torigo
talanga yori
Radio Jangwani.
Kaa nyumbani, zingatia usafi, epuka corona.
106.3 FM. Baragumu ya Faraja.
Yo coach doa
Mana banaranda di ajondae ai bo tungu bana angor tungu lugonji na ya ure do dibat na ya ngibana gwa ai bara di lai gibyak ngogina di lai gira ayongor ngishoshu debe jana ilalek kula sari dangma kurage gwanga kishang na nyangma kadanga ingugana oyalge linaban tungulu bai gibya yo 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 Mardi age me bagin gishang gibana di jimanda gibana na minaye nyabana ya gandai oi gibana gola mardi kurwaya ni ganare mosa buga mardi odurga na samburu oi moro gre naranda suwala rabali dal barda yo 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 idea 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 naide suwasi leila duma na badongoro ide ranjon oi na shumbala igibya hey dalge angirda marura minde gigi na ge dayo oi lol ge be maso hey dal durganan oi bardanu mumsoso na ro shola masai oi banyasa na Samburu ye nasna yo 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 idea 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 aje gunyul meyo na angara Samburu oi swango do yobudi ai maria na ngaro oi na di tabar ngidi nyage na dutuma na yobudi na shoraden oi rongi shanya sna aja sar marayu oi digin jori gore oi na me bara binara o me dilada oi patana ri yishang Medina nya yeida suwangi shunguma gibaru yo 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 idea 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 idea
Radio Jangwani. Kaa nyumbani, zingatia usafi, epuka corona. Samburu ya Faraja.
Alright, shuleng kigrade marina butana boto kuna sayam pargina ikibuna jingire chira ware ashuni kijuni nyeme barata kupune bara mba nikimpuruje tunubusi ya kongulika na ikijulo ajo enkewari na CCI na ware mba inabu nikigira na parai porutana ikiwari na kajombona. Kwa mara nyingi watu wa mtu akifariki hakuna anayesema ukweli, kila maybe tunachosema ni sifa tu na kajuka ikidiri kutoka Samburu. Kari judi kore mbe na buna parai parata na rishirani kijome parata na koro lotu mbujute ngiri terikele Facebook dada majo aripika ni nyeni ya swali na ke on the line pukutuma te julo po kajo enyo di basa na potu neja na kayu jena parta nike mpara kajo enyo di basa na potu tungana lenga inija ido ajo kore shi na kudu marajo pengel tungana nati nide kidul tungani nkishui koro ntu boku na jol tungani na repeta ke ana marajo do marajo kerre baklo tungana bakata na la purru ni torno apale tungane ma tungan le mejo kesu bara bangainia ne jaba tungainia mero tungana jo ke torno tadi la ngainia njo bage shomam ke torno le tungani na kayu ne barishira joki enyu di basa na pe mejo shul tungana ke ngara kitok tonulo kata tungani de ken kishui mera dul tungani na ko lo jonde di ajo kora bale tungani o ko pursho jaba ka wanga yam ko pursho mera tungani le mejo ai kesu bara le tungani o tungani super mera tungani le merre do ni marjo na ke alle tungani ana tungani bogdo no do ne de ken kishui kota mare do na tom fana ke le kay sutol no li jula jo korle tungani o ke tamal tungana sinarangkan ko pursho na ke ko naneja yilo jo ko den jo mare ronde de kayilo jo mel tungani de jakal taltaw oye amale tungani me angai bi mitu kaitam yosna kage mera do tungani ronyende mara jonde de na ke do tungani do torno tono de ken kishui na nya bekin barshajo enyu di basa na be mera chil tungani ojo na ke sipara rankara ke mba na ruwa na kuna tulika ke grade marina butana buta da maju ko nyeri shire engero tuna o shinye tungudi side wolen kayu ke niki jungo de shira ware na kaitu monetana de shira ware niki jo me parata ke baralu mulikin puru yeto no bosi yake wankule kai ridu jangwane lo. Hello barnai
Kejo bwana.
Ikira side wolen ngontai
Ikara sida yoleng bwana. Ira sida bwana.
ara side wolen tukul
Ore da mo yicha nanga madaka gede de ge itanga madana wodo akata makunya alon jongo jina cheza ingoro kutini.
ina
Ako da se ya nanga ya kara suba toleng tanga ma ingoro
awaton guri side wolen barnai
all mari lang poki.
ina
Ore tainya.
oo
Para de jige suba tanga ina tangare ge chami.
ayya
Yol dino tu.
oo
Wa bagera ra itarun.
ayya
Para ge piye. Tamana bagiti niki jojo ge torno.
oo
Nyere ke jogere je yo.
ayya
Betogere je yo nam ge tomo na gor na kat.
ina
Wa bagera torno. Wa rasubat.
ina
Loro yega ga jo subat jo wo tomo ya da tornenye. Tomo ya da subat chenye.
ina
Mo mai to ka lo dai sumba sidio. Ka ta na isia bana ka tongana kwa nya ka jo ke subat ada banganya. Ayo la ka jo la buru nya bagale.
na kuni si
Ka jo la to dua dai.
okay ngonya ka siabe
Dua dai. Ijo mara na ke jina ke subat na mu. Ke yo lo ina jo muro kire da lo dai da ro.
ina
Loro yega na ga jo subat jo. Ko ta kan dai ne ko na to ngo ka bagana da sa. Nya da won kai na ni ja da na para de ji.
ina
Na ke ikin jo ke yo subat jo de ne. Ai sindigi jagari ada lenya namu. Beso mo ke ada torranya. Ka jo da ran to dua dai de je jo.
asho wolen barnai tun duare no
Okay, asho le. Iyo ajol kuje meta foto.
Alright, asho wolen ya kijenye tun duare nyang konye na ke siabe korna bana ke torno mugurna do ngene de tele tungan na bakara torno asho wolen barnai tun duare no ke grabo do ko ya ridu jangwane lo
Wambaz.
Soba de wolen
Wambaz sini da ne tumas.
ai to mono leng ne rimala sin
Yo da ton da dai.
ayya
Amkata da apa leka wana kai tibirari. Amaita jo ai da kinyangoje do no bona na nyangoje.
Okay.
Mara ya ure mbaka riata.
Aja.
No bona na tibirari ta leka paya. Pas yo be tibi.
Okay.
Tu kaya lo bona ambil da mata.
Aja.
Na je ma be den da me gen de bana yo baka na paya. Ainda lek so isa to be meji balda somba yam kita ma yo sena wale.
Okay.
Aja na anya bi jenaja.
Aja.
Na ki kita yo la mi da jenaja. Igoro ta daga itembele ya kupaire.
Ena.
Na yo da na tu. Abaga na ke torra da na ba ke da samo ko sani.
Oh.
Ai, te inja si fani yani yo mono ko banka ini jo misigin.
Ena.
Igu jana jo seitani ni mi jadi goro ta gornara. Tundura ta ibainya.
Ashu weleng nerima sin tundura.
Ambi na ka jo mo chukunya na do.
Ena.
Lakini yo ba uninga. Yo sa ko baba ki.
Okay.
No bona ba ni no bona isera o ngai na ngai choma ngai na ni do hule jadi anyin tirna imba ba chake.
Ena.
Baba no buko do sita de na ngoji. Na ki jo na ga tongana na ke choma ga tongani.
Okay.
Yo mono ka ke.
Ni monoki.
Mke barra fana ko buko to ko ki meta tonga le meta mo ko sata na dunia.
Odo tana ko burusho le tongane kai na be mejel tongana job kai na ko lom ko burusho.
Ba yo be jane ja de bera ni ne. Ne jo gini obi milimo ba wona isa jo ko burusho.
Ina.
Na ko melimo ni na mo ko sane nyen ja ko be barra de mo ko sane nyen de.
Sawa shughuli tundware no. Alright, ashe nerimana sinori mancho yala isami se ejitu siya kenyen duare nye. Okay, ashe na aido kujagilia na kulo mundangara kal tungana ke o nyigitari do kuna sai yampare kiji igire de ko rimba na bona parne ki jomai paratana to kuna sai igitu enyo shiba kura baka pempe don kel tungana bakata na ko purusho ba me dol tungono ipango na agri ner sherene jo enjo baka yangam ko purusho ba tungani mera kal tungan lemejo ai kesu para langa ini bakata le ka purun dolo isom wata nyama pal tungona katangara na do leng kora do ajo e degen kisui mera del tungani ipanga jo hai kora le tungani jo baka shoma ko purusho ba le tungani mera tungan lemi panga jo hai kesu para langa ini o kore bo monto ke nekencho ne shore ta mara jo donye ngota sipai do na ke nimisha kuno do tener shira enyu di basa na pia sa tungana kamba na tuana kona jangwani lo. Okay, ashe kadolo bujito kejo kwa sababu maana hawezi amka akajitetea kwamba hapo ni uongo ama ukweli. Okay, sawa. Nejolobo hiyo ni njama fiche tu ya kufurahia kuwa amefariki nikiwa LD Unguso Harun ashe woleng akatu mojito ngudiside woleng mairi mari to kuna sai yampare keje arosi nye Maurice Kuyana ojito Wambaz like jo asho iko moto ashe woleng nejo I like your African ata ashe woleng mwalimu all the wakiwa logo gas arosi nyo grashi kunya Maurice Kuyana kejo tunawapa sifa cause tunaogopa spirit zao wanaweza to hurt my take nduarenye kejo ninye ikinjo na nganyi dangarake ikiura di mara jodonje dangarake manika kanubuna kimbana babasha do na kaito agili yulta oja na ito ro yulta oja alright ashe wolenge mwalimu tondware ni Maria Mari tongudis de wolenge adamajo ikiti yake ingireshini ridu jangwani lo. Okay, sawa ashe wolenge matribura kalo tongani liningito na yake ngonari tongona sai yampare keje nadolo ito sopo Oleman getting you loud and clear bro kejo hapo ni tricky sana lakini watu wanapaswa kusema ukweli. Okay, najoleka Oleman rudia hiyo mjadala shabiki sugu Alkano kutoka Merile. Alkano tulisema kwamba acha niseme kwa Swahili. Tulisema mbona kwa mara nyingi wakati mtu amefariki hakuna anayesema ukweli. Kila tunachosema ni sifa tu. Hata kama huyo mtu alikuwa mwisi chupafu, kila mtu ni sifa tu, lakini mbona watu mara nyingi hawasemi ukweli? Nitarudia tena, tunasema kwamba mbona kwa mara nyingi watu maybe mtu akifariki hakuna anayesema ukweli, kila tunachosema ni sifa tu. Mbona hayo? Tolikake tongure sidai oleng kigira airiamari tokuna sai yamparikiji nejo lobo supa Oleman kaatumuto tongure sidai oleng nipe namba ya call tadamajo kore namba naoshunyeki simu naa 07 51 tolikake nduata ino kore sii niyieu netamu orkilikuai tadamajo 07 kaa nduata ino Ridu Jangwani elo elo Ridu Jangwani
Oleman.
supa de oleng
Amu ngodol bae katanya na bisikinye.
Kaitumono oleng itii mbata eulauli.
Eulauli?
Kara
kita mule jere ne eulauli na itiene.
Aja.
Ne kajo yo na kira ga tungwan tele kare ki otu.
Oo.
Tungwan ne ka ga no.
Aja.
Aro ne tarore ba kita ba ke tornoshi.
Metarure bagara na ke tornoshi.
Ge jago njotu eyo ishakine tuwage.
Ina.
Na kuna Jawa imejili mo ndo ngile to ngana mduara ina Kenya.
Ashu oleng koto malaika.
Dia kita sumulia na kaira raki da ndo soka simu ana ke subati yeyo.
Sawa ashu oleng. Alright tumonda masidai kigira airiamari nabo tenabo kejenye tonduaranye iltung'ani deshi matejo naaku omelok naa meitoki duo naitieu naa katejo pooki mbaa torrok tenaa ketorrono apa ilo tung'ani. Okay, sawa. Ashe oleng. Ridu Jangwani elo. Supa de oleng.
Kaira kita.
Ashe oleng habari ya kupotea.
Sida ndangireuwa naibung'a metaa karrinyoki dei nkai nashe.
Pole oleng Narukungerin.
Katomoyia oleng maibung'a wasiwasi. Naaku taa karrinyoki naa nkai ai nashe amu kainyoyie duake anapata ara supat.
Ina.
Kashomo ng'ole ake sipitali nalo duake. Naa karrinyoki nashe oleng nkai.
Ina.
Najoki dei iltung'anak matirinyoki nkai nashe oleng abaki ishorita yiok enashan. Neewua nkai nkirewua metaa meata ng'oji neji metii.
Ina.
Nikoomon nkai abaki metirinyo ina kirewua. Kairoroki naa yie.
Arang'amai tenkoitoi sidai.
Kairoroki ng'oto sumato. Nairoroki taa ng'oto naasisho topurungo ng'oto sulio ng'oto nyika.
Ina.
Nairoroki ng'oto ltashamua. Ng'oto denila ng'oto nteneene nkiripasua.
Ina.
Nairoroki taa ng'oto Manueli tormudanda. Ng'oto najuma tesipiko nompusisaen ong'oto ltaanyo tantaleten kairoroki iltung'anak pooki amu kaibung'ita abaki nkirewua maidim abaki airoro.
Sawa ashe oleng kiyieu kiyie naake biotisho sidai.
Ashe oleng kairoroki abaki ng'oto loseku opaaye lokure siakija ng'oto loseku aanyo mukulotu asaya ining'ito ajo kapir.
Sawa.
Yie naa nar neitu aibung' nkirewua mulotu aimu nkoitoi nikilotu asaya nulo ng'ai nkai naasaya yie ntito yeyio.
Sawa.
Ashe oleng iroroki iltung'anak pooki olaado.
Okay.
Aya.
Ashe oleng ikiyieu kiyie biotisho sidai oleng Narukungerin otii manyisho eloochorin naa mama loseku tapasali teyieji ntikiti naake nulo asaya ninye Narukungerin tenkaraki mbaa nagira aimaa nisulaki mining'ito ninye sidai tombaa naipiru biotisho eseseni. Nadol ninye Chris Kurirayo ashu Esther all the way kutoka Samburu County. Ejo hiyo ndio tabia yetu wanadamu. Maybe hawatakangi kuhurt family na relatives but I think we should call a spade not a big spoon. Ukweli usemwe. Alright, ashe oleng Chris all the way kutoka Samburu County nesulaki manyisho Kisima. Sawa. Kejo ninye kore ina naa mbae nabo naake nagira iltung'anak lena kewarie naake aas kake ojo ninye tonduata enye oyieu dei peeyiolou iltung'anak naake atejo mbaa naake esipata. Rido Jangwani elo. Alright, ashe oleng laining'oni lai naa kore siake oyie nejia kigira aimaki mbaa natiu enaa kuna tadamu ajo kore lobo loyanyiti tiatua olosho le Kenya tenebo siake olojipa Daktari William Ruto naa epuo naa ninche aishoru nkitoret naake tiatua olosho le Kenya ashu state of the nation naa kajo kore tenkata nemelakua ikiponu iyie ayaki naake lelo omoni tenkoitoi sidai oleng. Rido Jangwani elo.
Oleman.
Supa de oleng Mama Antonia.
Sida na kitumike.
Ikira sidai oleng tukul.
Oleman utang'amai na ngurorokinoto.
Awa tenkoitoi sidai.
Nakurinyo nkai ang' nashe.
Ina.
Naisho yiok nkare. Kajoki naa Jana Rukungerin pole oleng Jana Rukungerin.
Ina.
Kiyo mda masada na kinjunyang kai.
Mhm.
Kon tay ni sa mi jeito.
Oo.
Oleman ko de singara yel dangani mi ya ta roida na mi sana ko sana dage.
Ina.
Kora bagada na apuren karna cha ga liyo na.
Mhm.
Ije dai kora daga na ko sana ge dum na ko sa ga ko ira baka gor.
Ayya.
Na ko na intendra ka bagada na apuren cha ga liyo.
Ina.
Ene jide ga da ka mu minto na ta rengar yel dangan na sa dage.
Mhm.
Na intero de shuguleshi.
Ina.
Kora bo ni jo kete berapa na toki gara pa na par na toki kete ko sina na cham na ja na sinya ngan ke kana ba ko na ja na ibu na jo
Ina.
na ko ta mzindo na ita re na ga donga no tom ke me o de singar gel donga no mar de sabare
Ayya.
ko zo be na ke chire de wolle ngem me opi
Mhm.
we gwina zanda masle ara ko ma ang paga bagda ona ru kerin mama lugwa donga na pagle jangoni
Ashu woleng mama dunia.
ayya
Alright, ashu woleng tumunda masade wojonye ikiuri desha iturukina nga tungunu guna rankishui. Kakimara tangara ke lumu nudulu ipirunjenga nyitna kaitu kwa igile namba na ushunye kisimu tangara ke tunguna kulogra ushunye namba olkele kuna kura na yulu namba ina jo uish na kete 55 tapasali mtu kwa ushunye namba olkele kutu ushunye siru sapa nabo sapa ime nabo ile uni nabo siru namba olkele kweke kura na ushunyeki siru sapa nabo sapa ime nabo ile siru nabo siru kuri ni amba negira ushunye elkele ku nti 31 to mushu tipika 10 to chuka kisimu tapasali redu jangwani lo
Hello, Oleman.
subade woleng
Iya dong.
egira side woleng etukul
Iya na bagi yun nito na ya.
ina
Na lengger siang bagati ngiro age denne.
aitu mono lenge eti maisho siambu
Iya antan nito na ngai.
aja
Iro dai nyane magata.
oo
Iro mara ilio na daga na tai na ri jagal to mana ke do ko age utol to mane.
aja
Baje siga ni gina do age ne jage to age ke so bada bage ke jage aje na ati do ne gine ja bage ke tor na bage.
ina
Ye jina age ke so bada ga rep na age. Amo gur na da na bage.
ina
Ama na chimo gure na yi shugunya bage nyaga na bada na ke tor no. Ago da ne ja daga jonan.
ashi woleng tunduaraino
Iya.
okay sawa sawa tumunda masada ikigira ria marina buta nabu ojeninye mera di basana na nekuni tangaraki metukudu ne merre binyenkere na ko tungani kake kore bunishu yakajo itumo tungani reshiran lika joki intorno kake do na joki apa shamba things are different on the ground amu kore do ishu tungani minto atoliki kore ne ngai tini deke do ngishui ninga sutal tungani marje do ajo kake mijoru tungana boro tungani nejeki yito twalta najo kore le tungani o ko purushaba na kaji di basana do yeri be asil tungana redu jangwane lo
Halo, ul malai.
subade woleng
Irusira nute.
egira side woleng etukul
Nanda rapunya jana batu kula.
aitu mono leng rapunye ti mansho kulal
Ero ro kital tunga boleng.
arang mai runguri sidai
Igurnyo ngai na sho leng.
ina
Ketta sya bagda na batu kula. Jadi jan kito.
ina
Na wata igira ta asbati.
ina
Igo ri shaga be na tunga ni neduguni na da no boleng.
aja
Ora ba ga chomo nage. Yana duguni ya jona.
okay
Mara gore na ba ga chomo nage. Na gore na du tingopo. Ikisha mina woleng.
ina
Na gore na ba ga dage ichomo. Isinya na ga molli no tuneja.
ina
Aku da sege ni gata.
aja
Iro go wan janda nya badanji.
kajo kiata kenjanda na kaunti ya marsabit ashudo nya mansho town
Ina.
iye
Ayya karo ro da go ware nage.
sawa sawa
Karo ge stalaram. Ore bega laram.
ina
Nanga sinyo to biye.
ashe
Nanga sinyo to bishop laram.
ina
Onni ngo pogle de jangwan.
ashu woleng rapunye
Ayal tungalai.
Alright, tumonda masede wuti manyisho ya mauntukulala. Kada usilubu ito hello Oleman ukopoa bro. Mimi naitwa Ngashau Marai. Ashuleng alobudi basana mkure Ngashau Marai. Lagira naka julona lobulu tinye manyisho Samburu County ne asisiai na kinkiteshini Syrian FM. Ashe nejolobo nimerudi Wambaz nanda lo karero kilumurando nubusi yako gumari na yankon dalasin decision hawo masisi kuku hamsa nkuchukana. Shiwuling adonda jio kikumul tuwana kulo granjero kiliku kaki aisumul kiliku tengere mela kwa Jangwani lo. Hello Radio Jangwani. Okay, taji credit butu marashuk ni donguri side wuling kibutu duko yana kaju kudu sekulo munloi Project State of the Nation ashura maisho elkedenged la Nairobi kaju mela kwa kaki ado nye lojibara isijiruti yana Dr. William Ruto na kulo turanye elkedenged le bunge na kitu nubusi yako senetani loingwa maisho na papasha na kaju kudu tengere mela kwa engasuna kinkiro etolo kirengete pukutumai dia marina bota nabo pukutumsaka tunumuimba na puninje na kai makridu Jangwani lo. Hello Ridu Jangwani.
Sasa.
Huwa sana.
Kaya lungalai.
Ikira supari. Kaitu muno lenga iruri.
Kaya nale yella nale ngangale tomalanta.
Haya.
Ya, kayo na nairora kana gulle to mana.
Manisho niki manyale kelele.
Na nagan lekor na gulle ki lekor.
Oh, kor niki manya. Sawa, tubo pakija watu wana linonoro roki.
Ayo nairo nga namanya ngo arabat. Na yella le kaya jil kirdan no dogi Jacob.
Haya.
Dogi saya nage ti kordene. Dogi gulla le ngamare mzima.
Sawa, ashu lenga tumunda masede kelele.
Ayal tunga endo yarangai.
Alright, ashu lenga mari na bota na boka dojo legani uile kara na nupa tuma show ninya sala uruma tunubo segulu munloi pero ninje na ke kiringel Nairobi na kajo kaya na bota na bo ana marabaki kiringel le Nairobi pukutuma rajulu munina kilo granje ay makini sulu kamba na jo State of the Nation Ridu Jangwani lo. Alright, karo nyelo bojo Ngashau Marai na ke woti kitush bro sawa. Shiwulenge ES Valencia para chao jito count me in sawa. Ashe mari tunguris de wuling kaki ayu na lo break na ajuka yik singulo na ke jiruti ana Felix Leseni singulo jiruti ana Rasaja Milo kaki kuru na tashulo singulo arabo jito Oleman kejo hiyo ni triki sana bro, lakini watu tunapaswa kusema ukweli sawa. Ashe wuling Felix Leseni Rasaja Milo.
Nimechanganyikiwa, chako lingine sina, usiniache hani, sina mwingine hani, nitaumia moyo na kujutia sana, ninakupenda sana ila nimekutesa moyo. Milo, saya Milo, nanyoroga ulai Milo, tawalia ye Milo. Milo, saya Milo, nanyoroga ulai Milo, tawalia ye Milo. Tawalia ye hani, torku waglai torhono, ayola janya lapi, nada bashari nalen. Tolgu wagiwe naisho kipenzi changu Milo, ona watoto wetu watateseka baby, wakikukosa mami usiondoke sheri, nilikupenda sana ila nilikutesa moyo. Milo, saya Milo, nanyoroga ulai Milo, tawalia ye Milo. Saya Milo, nanyoroga ulai Milo, tawalia ye Milo. Tawalia yo laulai.
Unasikiliza Samburu Show
Mina kupenda baby, mboni ya macho yangu, mama watoto wangu, kanyoroleng toldaulai. Mina kupenda baby, mboni ya macho yangu. Oh, Milo, saya Milo, kanyoroldaulai Milo, tawaliga ya Milo. Oh, Milo,
Radio Jangwa 106.3 FM Baragumu ya
Gonna be a loving papa, gonna be a caring hubby, gonna love you all my people. Gonna be a loving papa, gonna be a caring hubby, gonna love you all my people. Oh, Milo, saya Milo, kanyoroldaulai Milo, tawaliga ya Milo. Oh, Milo, saya Milo, kanyoroldaulai Milo, tawaliga ya Milo.
Unasikiliza Samburu Finest Show na Wambaz Oleman.
Nama yana kaiye aisho kulikishu kendebele vitaro nadoli kwa vyakulu ashumeki yonke anyala aikiliwa swali mamo mbako ainyona romino ilonke anyala nendekea olomulege mpota kimbaye kimayana aisho shumara nigiri kinajo era ida shumara nemera inako Lekaya mayendisho, nemelodi gemelu. Aye wa rashala gashani lekishona ihoy. Aye wa jogi, jingiriata, nibigo jirbebeta. Yero ni vengi, hadibo gedangai.
Unasikiliza Samburu Finest Show na Wambaz Oleman.
Magana kiro, gore magana, weta majolo yugolo. Nebe nelo, keto meto kiroi. Aye waira shilanga shandile kishona ihoe ilo lemerora kawanyo dama aye makejala nai o inesolage kade nyamaliai o naralaba kada nekiraye yanaye morugela shwama yanangai elo yoko yamurugo aye magenoroni yashu marananu Idana shadangaji nadoli kodya murugo Ega keke jokai Ninyama geni jiro Oi debana Agege desile Weke masiai Ayo naromito Ilaya gesile Me shadangaji Aye waira Shalaga shanile kishona ihoi Aye wajogi Ingiriana Nibigo jirbebeda Yero nidege Hadibu gedangai, onedo damainenye, egire bakuru, emikilairo, magana kiro, gore magana, wela majolo yugolo, neme nelo, keto meto kiroi. Orenge ngasiai, na uai kata, ingin nunggu agai, jale kai kutulo, inde uai pun, ana kana, ana nyanya, ana kwashe, ana bokeda, agiyo nani, orada kebedo, ade belebela, nikela labine, itona dungi kwana, alolo yangai. Amo ketaraba leme yarangasa amo ketarabolo bikin jogo yangarna Nemala mele koron Nama yana kai Mandole kiliari Konde rodi Nadoli kojonguru Nigiri kinacho Oyi kishoko Kata inana baba.
Alright, ashulenga singuro side ulenga jirutiana all turaki John all the way kutoka Narok County na singulo eside uleng nakalwata kilikoi ike joninye kure yilo jojo tata anal tuone wataman nyel pede pedo kure sire putu mongitari na kinloite nirikina jo enkai nikincho na kesiba ne jedul tuona kidene kiwarie akura kepere tuona ne kiwarie kure sire nirikina jo ike siba na yidi basana utudumolo tungani kake kure ninye ni grass na migira na keltuna airo. Alright, ashule ngajo kala tonde shulu singulu tengene melakuwa kake kayua kenikiliki kuna bana kigira makinisi lwake tejo enyodi basa na tungana kepemejo do sipara romba na rugwana kuna itugwa na no tungane dikidunye nkishui na mi makena bakana na lapuruni mituna itu atejo kota tungane o kera pale tungane lapuruni mera kal tungane lemejo weke supara dingainia o ejo ngai bo uri yola tungane supara ikunyi kake me adul tungane dumunye nejo ashenga ya mutura yola buruni tungane klena kiwiri kesiba watu wamechanganyikiwa kweli kweli. Radio Jangwani lo okay kada majugo shugunyolo tangarene melagwa kule siagri kile Facebook ara nyama iko leto jitoni kolog nikiwa Nairobi. Thanks God for the rain. Watu wanaongea uongo kwa kufurahisha familia ya waliofiwa. Najosalimia familia yangu wakiwa Kamboi na wana Jangwani wote. Ashulenge kejoni nya Mike Leto ama Mike Letole uimwa manisho ekituruni nesula kuimishira manisho ya Kamboi. Kejoni nye kejol tunganake nakulu mulimishia rangarake oyo nenje leadership nakel tunganake do marajo lotu monje nyamalu itibu arate ne deke donka jinabo tungono bonkishui na niku bora sabishajo hai pole ranga ina kayulo je kesubara bare dongane kage mel tungono shugui nejo hai ngaini apole ramutura bakiyo donka ina kala bruni Triki sana Radio Jangwani lo Subade Oling Egira subari
ina bagi ada yo itu naga naga
aja
iyo genero gila wake naga
atu gua pakai jadul dekka bo meshinyo yuri shara
iyo genero gerasian naga lebli itu saya naga me jaga dene nanga udu magi
sawa tumunda masdai mari
iya jeng
alright ashulenge Alright, ashile ni mulai kajuini akinta bakita na kiwari ikubuna tumunyesa la uruma na bota na budu kuna saina tijinganya dege ni onu mosal na kajukuru buku shukunye ni kijingoto kirishira ukuni kake kwa kulumu ni logranje na kia bodu kuya tamanchua Nairobi na kaito mokwe tungure side walenge kidari ya marina bota na budu tuwa nkiteshini Radio Jangwani na kajukuru sungulu na kilenye John Olturagi na kararua isho tungure side walenge tana shukunye kake kura narishara matum ninyesa la uruma puri inkarnate jo Wambaz Oleman.
Sala ya Rozari ya Huruma. Kwa jina la Baba
na la Mwana na la Roho Mtakatifu. Amina.
Baba yetu uliye mbinguni,
jina lako litukuzwe, ufalme wako ufike, utakalo lifanyike duniani kama mbinguni. Utupe leo mkate wetu wa kila siku, utusamehe makosa yetu kama tunavyowasamehe na sisi waliotukosea, usitutie katika kishawishi lakini utuokoe maovuni. Amina.
Salamu Maria,
umejaa neema, Bwana yu nawe, umebarikiwa kuliko wanawake wote, na Yesu mzao wa tumbo lako amebarikiwa. Maria mtakatifu, mama wa Mungu, utuombee sisi wakosefu, sasa na saa ya kufa kwetu. Amina.
na sadiki kwa Mungu Baba Mwenyezi,
muumba mbingu na dunia, na kwa Yesu Kristo mwanawe wa pekee Bwana wetu, aliyetungwa kwa uwezo wa Roho Mtakatifu, akazaliwa na Bikira Maria, akateswa kwa mamlaka ya Pontio Pilato, akasulubiwa, akafa, akazikwa, akashukia kuzimu. Siku ya tatu akafufuka katika wafu, akapaa mbinguni, amekaa kuume kwa Mungu Baba Mwenyezi. Toka huko atakuja kuwahukumu wazima na wafu. Na sadiki kwa Roho Mtakatifu, kanisa takatifu Katoliki, ushirika wa watakatifu, maondoleo ya dhambi, ufufuko wa miili na uzima wa milele. Amina.
Baba wa milele,
ninakutolea mwili na damu, roho na umungu wa mwanao mpenzi sana, Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo, kwa ajili ya malipizi ya dhambi zetu na dhambi za dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Baba wa milele,
ninakutolea mwili na damu, roho na umungu wa mwanao mpenzi sana, Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo, kwa ajili ya malipizi ya dhambi zetu na dhambi za dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Baba wa milele,
ninakutolea mwili na damu, roho na umungu wa mwanao mpenzi sana, Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo, kwa ajili ya malipizi ya dhambi zetu na dhambi za dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Baba wa milele,
ninakutolea mwili na damu, roho na umungu wa mwanao mpenzi sana, Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo, kwa ajili ya malipizi ya dhambi zetu na dhambi za dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Baba wa milele,
ninakutolea mwili na damu, roho na umungu wa mwanao mpenzi sana, Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo, kwa ajili ya malipizi ya dhambi zetu na dhambi za dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Kwa ajili ya mateso makali ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo,
utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima.
Mungu mtakatifu,
mtakatifu mwenye enzi, mtakatifu unayeishi milele, utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima. Mungu mtakatifu, mtakatifu mwenye enzi, mtakatifu unayeishi milele, utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima. Mungu mtakatifu, mtakatifu mwenye enzi, mtakatifu unayeishi milele, utuhurumie sisi na dunia nzima. Ewe damu na maji vilivyomwagika kutoka moyoni mwa Yesu, kama chemichemi ya huruma kwetu, tunakutumainia.
Kwa jina la Baba
na la Mwana na la Roho Mtakatifu. Amina. Ninakuja kwako Yesu nipone, Yesu wangu nipone. Wewe daktari wangu nakuita, Yesu wangu nipone. Ninakuja kwako Yesu nipone, Yesu wangu nipone. Wewe daktari wangu nakuita, Yesu wangu nipone.
Kituo ni kimoja, kituo nambari 1 kaskazini mwa Kenya, kituo chenye habari kwa kina na uketo, kituo chenye burudani babu kubwa, ni kituo chenye wanahabari waliohitimu na kubobea, na kituo chenye sound system nzuri na jukwaa. Bila shaka chochote utakacho ndani ya Radio Jangwani unapata. Ndio maana ni baragumu ya faraja. Wasiliana nasi leo kupitia nambari 0703-396-042. Radio Jangwani, baragumu ya faraja. Kufanya biashara bila kuitangaza ni sawa na kutabasamu gizani tu. Kuza biashara yako leo. Tangaza na Radio Jangwani. Tangaza mikutano yako leo na Radio Jangwani, iwe ya kibiashara, mazishi au hata michango. Kama haijasikika hapa, basi bado haijulikani. Wasiliana nasi leo kupitia nambari 0703-396-042. Radio Jangwani, baragumu ya faraja.
Kwenye darkness, kwenye kendo, professional, wakuhendo, the way you take me to the endo, when you human being,
Yade ngoreo singolitin sidan le kanisa, singolitin ligindomon, nigidumusi, winjonage ekigiro erishata sidaya Samburu fine. Boki olonge juma, itero sana bishana enda maomita shosato morning table.
Baba rangamula sarila ina yangaya. Yes, tanya yangaya. Toni ngori yele shiraka nanduwa. Yes, tanya yangaya.
Uitare Wambaz, Oleman, ereta na yu, kijuru, nege magi, nege nda yolo wargeta manyunoro sidai lor marita. Samburu finest, Radio Jangwani. Radio Jangwani, baragumu la faraja.
Assalamu alaikum madada na makaka, wazee kwa vijana. Basi leo house recording inawaletea
Bunge letu. Ungependa kuwa mmoja wa wasikilizaji wanaopokea mjadala pevu na uchanganua mada bila kupendelea upande wowote? Basi usikose kusikiliza kipindi kipya cha Bunge Letu kila siku ya Ijumaa kuanzia saa 11 hadi saa 1 jioni. Watangazaji wako hapa watakuchorea picha kwa kumulika mada zote ibuka za jimbo, ukanda, kitaifa na hata kimataifa, ikiwemo siasa.
Kila mwezi anatoa milioni 100 changu ya Harambee. Hiyo pesa ameiba.
Wakavunja chama ya Jubilee, wakaisambaratisha, mazingaombwe wakaweka huko ndani na mapepo. Ikawa ni chama ya kisirani ya kufukuza hawa na kufukuza wale.
Elimu, usalama, afya, kati ya mada nyinginezo. Kumbuka ni Bunge Letu. Kila Ijumaa saa 11 hadi saa 1 ndani ya Radio Jangwani.
Ni kweli mjinga ni mtumwa wa mwerevu. 2002 tuliwapa kura, kutoka mwaka huo hatujawaona. 2007 sasa wanakuja, hawana hata haya, wanatuomba kura. Siku nyingi tumeketi tunawacheki hao.
Ungependa kusikiliza kituo kinachokupa burudani tosha, kukuelimisha na kukupa habari kemkem zisizoegemea upande mmoja? Basi usitafute kwengine, kwani Radio Jangwani ndio makao makuu ya kukupa raha hiyo. Kupitia vipindi vyetu vya Kiswahili, Kirindile, Kisamburu na Kiborana kila siku ya wiki.
inabidi nimwombe Mwenyezi Jalali kwa moyo wa ndani. Toto si toto, yonimaliza toto, na siyo utoto, yeah.
Usipitwe na mashamsham isiyokuwa na kifani. Radio Jangwani, ama kweli ndio baragumu ya faraja.
Sikiliza Samburu Finest Show na Wambaz.
Solo alla iberolo iboyo.
Papa Bisengo Alaosho ni lerumba. tene jogi maya medio loy boyo tene jogi maya nanga yesu mala tene jangai maya emele kigwano tungana tene jogi maya niye baba emele tumar mare lini emele kigwano bayani le murwani ngwa tene jogi maya baby yologi tene jogi maya baba neme ngoror yongino neme ngorene baye neme ngoranda lebani waye tene jogi maya neme bodo kigwa tene jogi maya sorale medio loy boyo
Alright, shuling aggressive. You don't say anything to Moisir, a lot of Yelena in the Ulemacao, religion, Kaikimayan, Sudra, Medico, Naiboyo, Kuputuya, Tunasa, Yamparina, Namuju, Jimban, Grey Maki, and the Rishara Yawari, a Shundigraju, and Yudi Basana, to Monanga Peme, Yuru Sharajon de D, Nest Locket and Garatuna, they get to one in Kishui. Ito tayo ko rin bundo isyunyel tungan na mintu dua religion non separandu na astana bagdula puruna na tungani kage ko rin bulo tungan na ko degen kisui mel tungan lemejo eke super ngainia o njo tu apa ko nanaja na kayu organization dua ro tungan na lo granje rigorio de kele Facebook angasnyo o tungan na ngwa Samburu County Jirutiana Lenges Shops. Ejuni jambo Oleman nanta King Belan Lenges kejo kwa mjadala people take someone as a nice when he or she die because one, when you are going such tremendous pain, you need balm to soften the pain. And secondly, when we praise the person who died and remember his qualities, we get soothing feelings, which reduces our pain. And number three, and mostly we all die, so we take as nicely because after some time we will meet with that person again, either in heaven. So I think that is the reason why we say good thing. Okay, for those people. Alright, shukran sana King Belan all the way kutoka Samburu County. Ejo ninye ojo tungana kintuara na mara jodwana sipara rangareke ejo ninye itikida jo ibubu tukakani tumo lo tungani na kita ngai nguji pepa kara shumara na siya ngule nguji zin. Shukran King Belan tuntuarino kikida marina buta nabo na laini ngulai kora kiti jo sipara bunadaya ninye na ke State House. Nejida bagotu muni na ato ambarado na ipiru nkura na kura ijiru rijil tungana na ke lankaita rajo korodo njil tungana kitana kiwari korona parta na mara jodo nanu lari kun lena kiwari na karata runo tangara ke mea nankarna ma bigudo nya jo nchotu kori pegen likai tungani ninningo tukul tungana shukunya jo oi langaina bagai cash kake kora pogu na tuluri kai do ajo mai cash nedo ajo kora kal tungana na wata lakini idol tungana jo mara kan tungana idim do nye mara jo aitumul tungana klena kiwari neji siago tu korta na mara jo do kiri gwongob nejo angkaya itasha kake koro beshan chan do kajo ai dama kor dil dama ikona ne jan do ajo kora ngere tungana me don tuk na idim nye tana kiwari na jo ashi woling no lo granje itin duar kake koro wontu bori sheda kuni ayo kana shu tungana kwari na kimi makin duaranje pukutuma shomo nerishira nikijua mjadala Radio Jangwani. Hello Radio Jangwani.
Hello Oleman.
Supade woling.
Sira nera.
Ikira supari.
Kira spati.
Ikira side woling. Wondai.
Kira bagi spati.
Aja.
Ngaji tale kana tundo jawasi.
Ai tu mono lengi tinda nyawasi.
Kara na ya shaite kwe. Kara na to na pokla karre.
Aja.
Kara ka balto na kampo Ya na ina nugo na par tungana.
Oh.
Yo jagal tungani Oleman.
Aja.
Yo zel tungani. Notum ngas na jo ke supat na ke jol tongana ba ke supat. Woi nganyang supat. Na jana sa ko tungana kin kayat hay na dim jo.
Na nyude shina mitik na tungana ko jo separa do ali tungana jeki intorno jana ke torno tungan.
Na likini na ta tungana likina jo kra yo torno.
Oh.
Nata.
Sawa sawa.
Takra na kai torno nanu. Tara kana tenu lang.
Ashi.
Tara ko ngidu. Tara ko ngolosi.
Aja.
Nura ka bagi yai.
Sawa sawa.
Nura ka bagi na kono. Ikan sulai.
Asholeng.
Kaki jonga na shendo na shindu kukarara.
Sawa sawa.
Aya, ngunde jo tankai.
Alright, asholeng na sili gutu munda masede kubutu dukuya. Kuna sa yampare kiji. Arabu itu sebole mana kajunya kamun rudi elo do keni lenya jona ol churaki sawa sawa shuleng kake ka shura dir sungulu tanga tane mela kwa Subale mirulu boyo Como mengai na doye Alright, ashe udi basana do yitundu areno jangwane lo
Oleman.
Sebode oleng.
Mata chukunye.
Ai to monoleng.
Yo ba nani jaito.
Aja.
Yo dongani te. Abagale ga ilijo ha oyele.
Ena.
Azu mega nyana pasi.
Okay.
Nyama na taba la dongane se me to garriya iwin.
Ena.
Tanya na ga baba yo ro se. Orang beya cinguluba.
Oh.
Nyenye ngodu ratwa bagi yo dana ke taraba badana ko ya bando ko aye.
Aya.
Idi adu roi chere tani to ai pomocha.
Ena.
Ye daga ha oi langanya ya minti daga tu dana daga ite. Ne ja daga tu ne to gam dana daga ite.
Ena.
Na ga ne dan daga ya ko.
Asho lengen tunduare no narukungerin. Alright, asho lengo gresho duar na jona Samburu. Aro nyolo bito Oleman na mimi ni Kate wa Gotea kina Salome Vivian wakiwa Kori na mama Kate akiwa Nairobi na mama Salo. Sawa sawa, asho lenga kake kadi basana nduareno. Jangwani lo.
Hello.
Subade oleng. Ikira supari. Kaito mono lenga iruri. Catherine. Kaito monoleng Catherine.
Kayo na waki watu ngama. Kayo na waki ya itina ribi. Gato sawa tina ribi.
Okay.
Kana sala ni netikor.
Aja.
Nijia netikor. Ati yote wa ini pokle tikoro le tikargi.
Sawa sawa.
Saka sampai pokole.
Shulenga Catherine.
Haya.
Ora, shukran sana na uwe na siku njema. Kigira tuka lenye sisa siamba mintisia uya ridu jangwani lo. Hello ridu jangwani. Hello.
Kija Oleman.
Ikira spari.
Ni mama Melvin.
Kaitu monoleng mama Melvin.
Toka laisani.
Ashe.
Yolo na ini adua tai tainya.
Oh.
Ke yolo tongani poke shaketene meta tongani leme yani lemeshir.
Ina.
Lakini yolo mpari nae ninchirake lakini iyo aga ne kol tongani yani ati
iyo ba merelo tongani. Okay.
Lakini yolo tongo ngai nurel tongani je pumuku gori.
Ina.
Amyo na ta tongani.
Okay.
Indi mijo bake kaidim na gorta na tejo bake yani torro kenyenye. Na ina takan dua tai kayo na rara ko tongana. Tongana.
Ma bedo ko ya mama Melfo.
Kayo na rara ko siya ti Nairobi. Na yo na rara ko kana ishe na jimpensi.
Okay.
Na yo na rara ko na ji kare mama. Mariam Tegi. Nyaki ngai rafiki nya ine naji Mix.
Okay.
Nyaki Saliwan.
Sawa sawa.
Kiaki nawapenda wote.
Sawa sawa, shukran sana.
Tumo naanda masidaya.
Aya, shughuli Mama Melfin all the way kutoka Laisamis na ada majutumo tuwanakoloji kare mama kina mustegi ingero ngure side woleng kubudu duga yanda kuna sai kejeni tunduaranye ikiuri na kajol tunu kata kiguri nimi tu siaga itu dua tungan dua rajo imba di basana yele tungani ashughuli jangwani lo. Hello, Radio Jangwani.
Wambaz Oleman.
Mr. John.
Eja bro.
Ekira side woleng.
Yalla spati.
Ekira spati woleng. Wonta ye.
Kiki kira spati.
Aja.
Gida mari an disanga yana da me na ga ai.
Na.
Nyam jada ni di.
John ke magrajo enyo shiba kurul to wona be de ngishui. Abagata na ko puruchole to wona meral to wona to loitu ada jo ko puruchole da balanga inya. Meral to wona mera kerre bagalo to wona bagata na ke toruna ba.
Gorna ci subal chol dongani ba al dongani. Morom mo guni inju.
Aja.
Morom mo satun no pogo guni inju. Koro kanya pe.
Okay.
Marnala unna ma gorna ba sata dal dongana dwagle side le dere to ye le side ye ratigil no dwagal da no danga ngoto no ngaja bil no.
Na.
Marnala unina. Ne no bugu dai na bari.
Na.
Amma dala ke nango mama dongani ne al dongana kumo. Na uni laji poro mo na gorna uni atai. Na ko na nan to na joginya era yeso pate amo ke ti u igi dina no bobogi.
Na.
Lakini gor do ya. Idol be jogini dongani ya era yeso pat.
Okay.
Aji dai ko ne tene joginya gore na gara na digina na na bogi digi bogi.
Na.
Na ga badagal dongani ko ra ya ko nya me te do na duniya dene. Ne kire na ngordi na nya bogi na da mar kire ni.
Okay.
Amma ne ra madina ya shin azalaki.
Na.
Na da na san ya da na aldo mana. Na ne to giba ma da ndo wana super di bo de ni.
Okay.
Kora bolo ke berdi bas na barni asada ni na barna bongo mo menye na barna bagene di bere le nye na du jagen ne wur.
Na.
Na ne to gari na mara ke bai na mara ke jibe ke torno na mara ke jibe ya bagene asan dai to. Kora ga ga da ngoma bas na barni to kumo na ra maji jagen ya bo.
Na.
Na ko ni je da tu.
Okay. Sawa sawa shi uleng John tondore.
Kora ga na ra ma egara ma ya ga ma jaka su pada ko tuni jade le ai ngapa ke ora ya ko da mo ni do ala ke ber bas ne ko mo ngai ne ke ra nye.
Na. Sawa sawa shi uleng.
Wa dorno wa su bas ne kora ne limuna bana nyari unin wan kanya ja ke so da bana bari ko.
Na. Shi uleng tumonda masde Mr. John. Alright, shughuli keje John ko rishil tungan na ko gune maraje do itina ke anoko dola jo metu duna do bana ne gira na ka asta kake ko no bul tungan na laudo maraje ora matino bando ajo me do tungan limu shukunya jo ko tunne jara abalanga nya na ay ko nane ja kake ko gundu inchul tungan do ajo me tungan dikin jo na ke rebeta shi woling siake tine duare no Mr. John la rapo akio menu ya logo ridu jangwani lo. Hello, Radio Jangwani. Supa Devi.
Ikaira ka da yi dina mo.
Ranga mo irunguri side oleng.
Nanda le sa sele adingul.
Aro
ke le ka ta yi lor le ti arge.
Aja.
Ta ki da ki je no to si je simu mata nya ke siga nanga ngama.
Sawa sawa. Asholeng la sasuri mansho ngurni de ko sita na barawul kile ko kado nya James le korleiti oti manyisho ya sarima kajo nye hello Oleman subara surure kajo na no kore paye milimuni na kan torog kejishi mukuru tungana ake marjo lokulupo. Okay, sawa sawa Samburu tokulo Radio Jangwani lo. Sawa sawa mati ripoto kalo tungani na kalo gramo shusimo tokuna sai embarikeje na rusubuito subo Oleman tunakupata loud and clear kejo hiyo ni triki sana bro lakini watu tunahitaji waseme ukweli. Kejo nyeke yune jo tungana kana kamata judo dede tuomba ne gira ai make na angai de basa na kanya lelo tunya jo na kisipata Radio Jangwani. Hello Okay, sawa sawa. She. Alright, ashi wuling leni ngulai kuri naki kira poduku ya adol nye luenyi tituro shule Kenya jiruti yana Rais Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta aju watabawa na nye mpunge putu mnakai makamba naipiro lo shule Kenya. Tata maju kura banyel mete le kuruna na rawashi pala pali ukuni lari langal finari wutikita ma na jurutu nye imaki naka putu maimaki siakamba naipiro uchumi tutu aleo show. Tunubu isi akomba naipiro naki siren tutu shule Kenya ashu security and transition pools among key issues. Na ajo ulutunya makamba na ipiru economy, pandemic, security and transition pools among all. Na kajo mela Maria mkia kiji nabuta nabuku luku muneke all the way kutoka Nairobi State House. Nesulaki woti na ki parliament ale usho le Kenya na ajo ulutunya makamba na ki naipiru ale usho le Kenya. Tada majukuri siaklo na ki jiruti na Rais Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta na urusinye makamba na ki inkuro na ruto lari langal finare utikita mare nesula ko imake mba na kana ipirajo ngai di basa na ujiri pengwa kini naka aleo show le Kenyatta na ngamata ni jilo ajo watabagode iresheta na ushiku kura lari langal finare utikita mare na kajo kuri jene ja kajo akajo kini David nere shera na kemba ni kigre ai makini sula kida juri shera ai wari na ajo agre kanya ran duar to na ko granje maki ajo enyo di basa na to na kishipe mi maka to no to ngani de ngishui mitum ai karal to ngono jodi nye ko rabala ngainia na waran nyel to ngon torno kake me adol to ngol mudumu nyajo ege subara bala ngainia ne jabatu la ngainia ne joba kambara mo purusho kake kadol tungono kumaka jo oyeri na ke bejo tungana ko nje sibara ana na show do ajo ne jeda baka shutu di kori koduri kori nuna madol tungana kila na kara kake ko tunum pungol tungana niningol tungana jito ai apa sali da baka kila ngainia. Alright, ashi ne jelo mambo Oleman na kusalimia wewe na dadangu akiwa akula Isamis Mantiki akiwa Eldoret na watu wote wa Jangwani kaji tuongar lekoli kutoka Mount Kulala. Shuwaling ne jelo please Oleman na kayu singulu na kilenye Sorel Duka lenye pila sipilonje Mama Hani kutoka Koru. Shukran sana Mama Hani oti manyishe okoro kaju kayi kadelo singulu lenye pila sapilonje singulu juruti ana selengei eldoka sore. Alright, ashi wuling leni wulina yu na kaitu makajika kurinye Rais Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta na anana rishara emusho na kena ipangoni nyedo aidide na kilo shule Kenyatta da majukuri rishara na ke el Rais yiluti na Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta na warabawa na nye rishara emusho tukul na kena gerenya jo to deliver second last address to join sitting of parliament na ajo ulutunye aimako kuna ba tata majuko rinye sikukuu apa pookin nagira arikoo tolosho le Kenya na mukure na ware enkai sikukuu nagira nye arikoo tenkaraki etabawua naa kirishata emusho naake enye ana rais lele osho le Kenya na nepipang'u naa ajo kore siake ilturrur obo oitasheki erishata IBC ashu olosho le Kenya na ogira siinche aing'oru naake ewoshoto naake nabo tiatua ele osho naake peetumi siake aimaka ajo elo naa Kenya neyiaya likae rais tiatua olari le 2022 yani 2022 na oipang'u naa siake olosho le Kenya peepuo ninche ayiolou naa ajo ng'ae dii pasa naa lototoki aaku larikoni naake lele osho ana president. Nadol obojoito Oleman kejo bro toroki and Lucy from Kor, mimi ni Dominic Pepe. Shukran sana Dominic Pepe nejo lebo Oleman following from Kor nejo engurana kake singolio jiroti ana enkakenya sidai lenye Susan na Shibai. Shi nejo lebo kejo Oleman kejo kereroki mama Ilpirisin mama Wandi Langarus nanuta ntito eloro kusho shi oleng kake otukilika joki amanyisho nabo nikimanya tulika kejo lubutu nabo nikimanya pukutumare yilonoto nabo tanabo ekigira apuo dukuya tiatua enkitesheni ip nabo oile mpointuni tatamajo redio Jangwani na kajo kore woni kiripto nake ninye rais meu naka ishuru lumuni loipiro ale osho le Kenya ware dol tungono rejo ninye ingile lo singolio nake tungono ji John olchurraki na tatamajo singolio nake ormaasai otaranya tenkuri sidai oleng na ajo ayie kilo singolio patum aisho tenkoitoi sidai oleng tadamajo kore osingolio na ogira aipiro mbaa erikore na kajo kerenye singoliotin kumok na ajo ikipuo nake atum lelo singoliotin naake tenkata nemelakwa kake kore laisho na aisho singolio yioloti ana enchalan nang'atikina ondai.
Basio ingiliguana amese kayolo amumese siai wale siai yenye demana ronganas aina sar marenge wenjala nangargina modai wengolo nangargina ngeno naina beye wala yodo shal namana dalatia aina la molabi ashiranga la yodo asibengen Amu miru genjo, ani ningir kolegai, kesyo ya esireko, negwa nemelio. Wana sojo, kisho ya nasiye, namana rongana, ago jaimi. Onde rasho manya, tambala sarugonya, urena naingwa, irusiagao, engai anira, nagini nono, ramana rogo, nana shaini, omigamba yosina, ina niwa, urenjala, nangargina modai, urengolo, nangargina ngeno, naina beye, parala yodashal, Namana dalatia, aina la molabi, ashadanga la yunu, asibengen, amu miru genjob, aini ningir kolegai, kesyo ya esireko, negwa nemelio. Sojo andara kolegai anamera ninje kini lo sogoni anyango nadarae narai gadegera kagedini mirbeye kabonga subul namana ronganas elengi yorgirigoi yo dushugoyu kingurai ninono ajoga sera amugala bawe baye wenjala nangargina modai wengolo nangargina ngeno naina beye wala yonya shal namana rawatia ayra la bolabi ashiranga kwa yono asibengen amumiru genjo anini ngirkolegai kesyo ya sirego nebo nebenyo. Yonyogo naga darmoneki wala dogoya kedem wakoragos amomidi nebejo kibasie kinyala wore sien yare nage norkiti wore sien neuni nemebada sangala airu genjo enini ngerkolegai wore siayene.
Alright, shughuli ngeni ngulena kaju kaya nabuta nabuki kirakati mlusungulu na kama tiningana na jo rais lo shule Kenya jiruti ana Uhuru Muigai
9th of April 2013. As always, it is a great pleasure to return to this august house where I have had the opportunity to serve on both sides of the parliamentary divide. Indeed, with many of you who are present here today. I first served as a nominated member of parliament, introduced into this chamber by the Honorable Raila Odinga and the Honorable Musalia Mudavadi. And later as a cabinet minister. And after an unsuccessful presidential bid in 2002, I found myself on the opposition benches as the leader of the official opposition and member of parliament for Gatundu South. 5 years later, I was called to serve as Deputy Prime Minister in the Grand Coalition Government under His Excellency, the former President, Honorable Mwai Kibaki, and the Honorable Prime Minister, Right Honorable Raila Odinga. In that position, in that administration, I held two positions, the Minister of Trade and later the Minister of Finance. This journey of mixed fortunes taught me that you could serve your country in any capacity because service is not a position, it is action. It also taught me to have empathy for both sides of the parliamentary divide and indeed all shades of political opinion. Of all the lessons, the enduring one is that Kenya is always greater than any one of us. Indeed, in times of great political turmoil, men and women must be spurred by the love of their country to bridge partisan divides and to come together to put Kenya first. It is not always easy, but honorable members, it is necessary. Then as now, we are called upon to do all that is necessary to heal Kenya, to build bridges, and to focus on the 99% of shared visions of a better Kenya as a priority to the 1% of differing ideologies and positions. Personal ambitions were placed aside for the good of Kenya and the enduring benefit of generations of Kenyans yet unborn. And that selfless service, that sacrifice, led to the people of Kenya ultimately working together, bestowing upon me the high honor and extreme privilege of serving them as president in 2002. for the trust and faith that the great people of Kenya placed on me, I am and will forever be most grateful and internally humbled. Mr. Speaker, today I return to Parliament as President, and I am here to fulfill a constitutional imperative introduced into our political tradition and practice by the 2010 Constitution. In fact, I was indeed privileged to be the second president to be discharged this constitutional mandate when I first made my first State of the Nation address on the 27th of March 2014. The Constitution at Article 132 mandates the President to report to a special joint sitting of both Houses of Parliament on measures taken and progress made in the realization of our national values as defined by Article 10 of our Constitution. I am also constitutionally obliged to report on the status of our fulfillment of the international obligations of the Republic and the state of our national security and the general state of the nation. In line with this constitutional instruction, my address today will lay emphasis on three elements that I consider important to our country. The first is the state of our economic development, which is about our national well-being. The second is the state of our social structure, which looks at the restoration and propagation of the dignity of our people. And the third is the state of our nationhood, which speaks to the soul of our nation, including the state of our democracy. Before I report on these thematic areas, allow me, ladies and gentlemen, and honorable members, to give a brief account on the state of our national response to emerging disruptions. Specifically, I want to now put on record how the power of choice on the part of our administration, as supported by Parliament and indeed the county governments, turned the COVID-19 pandemic from a national crisis to what I believe is an intergenerational opportunity. Mr. Speakers, when the pandemic hit our country in March of 2020, we were quick to warn the nation that a crisis is twofold. It is partly a danger and partly an opportunity at the same stroke. I highlighted the inescapable fact that depending on what you focus on in a crisis, you can either emerge triumphant or indecisive out of fear and despair. In other words, a crisis is indeed all about choices. Those who choose danger and fear do not survive. Those who see the crisis through the lens of opportunity develop resilience and are able to build back better. And I say this because, for instance, a Kenyan company known as Revital, operating in Kilifi County in the Coast region, became Africa's largest producer and exporter of vaccine syringes during the COVID period. In 2020 alone, Revital exported 70 million COVID syringes to over 20 countries globally. In fact, Revital currently has the capacity to produce 300 million COVID vaccine syringes every year. The global shortage for COVID vaccine syringes stands at 2 billion, and this itself is taking advantage of opportunity. This means that Revital is able to produce 1 out of every 10 COVID vaccine syringes globally. The company saw opportunity in the crisis of COVID, adopted accordingly, and innovated its business processes to optimize on the new opportunity. Another company in the same league is Hela, a global apparel making company with a foothold here in Kenya. In the first months of the pandemic, this company changed its strategy from producing clothes to producing PPEs and face masks. With the WHO requirements of 80 million face masks per month at the height of COVID duress, HELA produced 5 million masks a month between April and May 2020. This means that through innovation, HELA manufactured 1 out of 16 masks required globally every month, contributing immensely to the slowing down of the COVID pandemic. This again was a case of seeing opportunity in a disaster and adopting to the changes. However, choices are nothing without leadership, and I say this because when COVID-19 hit our country, my administration found itself confronted with a dilemma of two rights. Opinion was sharply divided on whether to lock down the country or to leave it open. On one side of the divide, they presented an economic argument. They warned us that to leave the country open, they advised us to leave the country open and save the economy. And they argued that COVID was a health crisis that should not trump economic imperatives. The other side of the divide made a compelling health argument against the economic argument. Led by a brain trust of medical scientists and researchers, they argued that the country had no option but to lock down. Their models pointed to a soaring crisis if drastic choices were not made. According to these experts, a series of irreducible minimums had to be met before considering softer health protocols. Indeed, after much reflection, we opted for the public health argument over the economic argument. Our rationale was that you can always revive an ailing economy, but we cannot bring to life those who die from the pandemic. And with this logic informing our choices, we set out to build the irreducible minimums recommended by the experts to forestall a COVID disaster. Although the health argument won, we did not dismiss the economic argument in toto. We made fiscal choices to cushion the economy through a number of economic stimuli. And today I'm happy to go on record in this august House as having succeeded in the choices that our administration made. Because of our fiscal stimuli, today I can report that the impact of COVID on our economy was 14 times lesser than that on the global economy. As part of the first stimulus package that we announced interventions that warranted the national exchequer to forego taxes amounting to Kenya shillings 176 billion. These tax measures included the immediate reduction of VAT from 16% to 14%, 100% tax relief for all persons earning up to Kenya shillings 24,000, reduction of pay as you earn from 30% to 25%, reduction of corporation tax from 30% to 25%. We also caused the lowering of the central bank rate, the CBR, to 7.25% from 8.25%, so as to prompt commercial banks to lower interest rates applicable to their borrowers and thereby avail much needed affordable credit to MSMEs across our country. We lowered the cash reserve ratio, the CRR, to 4.25% from 5.25%, so as to provide additional liquidity of approximately 35 billion to commercial banks in order to directly support borrowers that were distressed as a result of the economic effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Central Bank of Kenya also provided flexibility to banks with regard to the requirements applicable to loan classification and provision of loans that were performing as of the 2nd of March 2020. We further engaged banks and all financial institutions to support all enterprises and families that sought to restructure their commercial banking through debt moratoriums and review of tenure of these facilities. There was a temporary suspension of the listing of the credit reference bureaus of any person, micro, small, and medium enterprise, and corporate entities whose loans had fallen overdue or was in arrears. The Kenya Revenue Authority was directed to expedite the payments of all verified VAT refund claims amounting to some 10 billion shillings, or in alternative, allow for the offsetting of withholding VAT in order to improve cash flows for businesses. The 6 billion shillings from the Universal Health Coverage Kitty was immediately appropriated strictly towards supporting counties in the recruitment of additional health workers to support in the management of the spread of COVID-19. Subsequently, we rolled out the second stimulus package with the support of this House, whose tenant was an 8-point economic stimulus program amounting to some Kenya shillings 56.6 billion. The first element of the 8-point program focused on Buy Kenya, Build Kenya policy. On local infrastructure development, we allocated 10 billion towards the National Hygiene Program, dubbed Kazi Mtaani Initiative. The program was conceptualized as an extended public works project aimed at utilizing labor-intensive approaches to create sustainable public good in the urban development sector. The program has so far secured gainful engagement to over 750 youths engaged in the improvements to the environment and hygiene and in the rehabilitation of access roads, footbridges, and other public infrastructure through local labor. The second was on education, with an additional 6.5 billion to the Ministry of Education to hire an additional 10,000 teachers and 1,000 ICT interns to support digital learning and the acquisition of 250,000 locally fabricated desks. The third element of the program targeted small and medium enterprises through an injection of Kenya shillings 5 billion as seed capital for the SME Credit Guarantee Scheme. The intention here was to provide affordable credit to small and micro enterprises. The fourth focused on universal health coverage through acquisition of locally made beds. The fifth element of the stimulus program focused on agriculture. We prioritized 3 billion for the supply of farm inputs through e-vouchers, targeting 200,000 small-scale farmers, and a further 1.5 billion to assist flower and horticultural producers to access international markets in a period where we had a shortage of flights into and out of our country. Tourism was the sixth area of target for the stimulus program. To jumpstart this important sector and to protect its players from heavy financial losses, we provided soft loans to hotels and related establishments through the Tourism Finance Corporation, and a total of 2 billion was applied towards renovation of facilities and the restructuring of business operations by actors in this industry. To mitigate the impact of deforestation and climate change, and to enhance the provision of water facilities, we rehabilitated wells, water pans, and underground tanks in arid and semi-arid areas, and we applied Kenya shillings 2.5 billion for flood control measures and our Greening Kenya campaign. The eighth and final element was a stimulus program was manufacturing. As a strategy, we enforced the policy on Buy Kenya, Build Kenya, and we set aside an initial investment of 600 million shillings to purchase locally manufactured vehicles. This was expected to sustain the operations of local motor vehicle manufacturers and their attendant employment of workers. Mr. Speakers, the foregoing interventions help to reinforce the resilience of our economy while cushioning millions of households against the effect of the economy. And in that regard, while most economies in the world shrunk, Kenya's economy grew at 0.3 during the 2020 period, despite the COVID challenge. Although this positive growth was minimal, the second quarter of 2021 registered the most impressive growth ever recorded in our nation's real GDP. During the second quarter of 2021, real GDP recorded a phenomenal 10.1% growth, and this is the highest growth ever recorded in one quarter in Kenya's history. It is also the first time Kenya has hit a double-digit growth number. The last time Kenya's economy got close to this kind of performance was in 2010, during the Grand Coalition government, when the economy hit an 8.4% growth rate. And it was this impressive trajectory that led me to announce the 13-point interventions unveiled on Mashujaa Day this year to cushion the economy with a further Kenya shillings 25 billion as our third stimulus package, pushing the aggregate of our stimuli over the COVID period to Kenya shillings 257 billion. The third stimulus package focused on the key productive and service sectors that covered agriculture, health, education, drought response, policy infrastructure, financial inclusion, energy, and environmental conservation. These 13 interventions were as follows. The first intervention was in the tea subsector, where I am pleased to confirm that we have supported the tea subsector with Kenya shillings 1 billion in support of fertilizer subsidy for our tea farmers, securing our nation's top agricultural export, and happy also to report that our tea farmers are today receiving the highest pay that they have received in many, many years. The second intervention was in the sugar subsector, and I note with satisfaction that smoke is once again billowing in our public sugar mills, following the allocation of Kenya shillings 1.5 billion in aid of the sugar sector that is being applied towards factory maintenance and the payment of farmers' arrears. The third intervention was in the coffee subsector, and I confirm that 1 billion shillings was released in support of the ongoing reforms in the subsector that is being applied towards completion of the ongoing targeted interventions in the coffee subsector. The fourth intervention was in the livestock subsector. The Kenya shillings 1.5 billion National Livestock Offtake Program is on course in support of communities adversely affected by the ongoing drought in ASAL counties. The fifth intervention was also in the livestock subsector, and I confirm that the interventions geared towards the reduction of the cost of animal feeds are well on course. The sixth intervention was in education. Noting the success of my administration's policy on 100% transition from primary to secondary school, I did direct that the National Treasury should allocate a further 8 billion shillings to the Ministry of Education for the CBC Infrastructure Expansion Program, targeting the construction of 10,000 classrooms. And I am most pleased to confirm to the nation that all the county's works and constructions of the classrooms should commence by early December 2021. The seventh intervention was in health, to enhance access to medical coverage across our country, and as part of our universal health coverage program, I did direct the Ministry of Health to establish an additional 50 new level 3 hospitals to be situated in both non-covered areas as well as densely populated areas across our nation. And I also directed the National Treasury to allocate the sum of 3.2 billion for the immediate construction of these new medical facilities. The eighth intervention was the National Sanitation Program. We started this program, as I said earlier, to harness the energy of our young people and to give them a buffer against COVID-related unemployment. Noting the success of Kazi Mtaani program and its effect in enhancing opportunities for the youth across our country, we did require the National Treasury to allocate a further 10 billion shillings for the third phase of the Kazi Mtaani program to cover youths and to be rolled out in all our counties across the country. The ninth intervention was on energy and petroleum. Being fully aware of the positive strides being made in our economic recovery and cognizant that the gains stand the risk of being eroded by high energy prices, I am pleased to confirm that we are on course to institutionalize the sought reforms. The 10th intervention was on access to credit. Critically, I asked the National Treasury and the Central Bank of Kenya to consider suspending the blacklisting of creditors with loans below Kenya shillings 5 million at the Credit Reference Bureau, in a move that targeted retaining the bounce-back potential of the foundation of our economy. As the 11th intent, I also asked the National Treasury and the Central Bank of Kenya to consider revising the maximum amount an individual or enterprise can withdraw or deposit from a bank that previously stood at 1 million shillings, which was not supportive of our current business environment. I'm glad to report to Parliament that as of the 8th November 2021, the Central Bank of Kenya issued a notice suspending the listing of negative credit information for borrowers with loans below Kenya shillings 5 million, and that fell into arrears from October 1st, 2021 to September 30th, 2022. This will give the MSMEs 12 months to reorganize themselves and to adapt to the new economic normal. I am also happy to report that the Central Bank of Kenya is at an advanced stage of revising the 1 million threshold for cash deposits and withdrawals in the banks. This will facilitate easy transactions for MSMEs and help the economy respond to COVID shocks. The 12th intervention was a digital financial services subsector. In recognition of the importance of the digital financial services, especially in the small-scale traders and households at large, I did direct the National Treasury to engage all digital payment providers with an aim of deepening and expanding the use of payment channels. The third intervention was two-pronged. One in the area of vaccination against COVID-19 as part of our national response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We rolled out a national vaccine deployment plan aiming at vaccinating 10 million adults by June of 2022 and approximately 16 million by June of 2023. With regard to the COVID-19 vaccine production, we have set out to implement the lessons of self-reliance, which was one of the key learning points of the pandemic. As the first step towards this goal, we established the Kenya Biovacs Limited, a venture that would locally produce anti-COVID-19 vaccines. I therefore directed the Ministry of Health to operationalize the company to form and fill an eventual manufacture of our locally produced vaccines by Easter of next year. Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, at this point I would like to take special note of the resilience of our revenue collection systems under the Kenya Revenue Authority. For the first time, KRA has exceeded its revenue collection target despite the COVID stress over the economy. The KRA projected a Kenya shillings 1.5 trillion collection in tax during 2020. They collected Kenya shillings 1.67 trillion, which was in excess of their projected intention. But on this note, I must report on the sterling performance of KRA, not only under the COVID duress, but in the last 8 years of our administration. In the last eight years, KRA has collected Kenya shillings 10.8 trillion cumulatively in revenues. This means that in just 8 years, KRA has collected the equivalent of Kenya's total GDP. It also means that on average, KRA collected 1.3 trillion shillings every year. Honorable speakers, honorable members, to accelerate the turnaround of our micro, small, and medium enterprises under the ease of doing business government agenda, my administration has implemented remarkable reforms over the years. These measures have not only improved the country's business climate, they have also mitigated the challenge and bottlenecks impacting business. The key reform that we have implemented include the full automation of business registration services, re-engineering of the application for power, water, and sewer connection, and the automation of the land registration process. In addition, we have adopted e-payment, e-filing, and e-service at the commercial divisions of the High Court and fully operationalized the Small Claims Court, which has seen disputes involving SMEs, mostly our young people, being resolved within a record 60 days and thus freeing capital locked up in legal disputes. Equally important is the full automation and streamlining of the payment of taxes in order to ease the burden of compliance and the redesigning of the import and export processes, which has reduced the cost while improving efficiency of our ports, among other notable reforms. Mr. Speakers, as an affirmation that our reforms on ease of doing business are bearing dividend, just last week we scored a global first with the President of the European Investment Bank, who was in the country to witness the official opening of the European Investment Bank's first regional hub outside the European Union. The Nairobi Regional Hub will cover 11 countries in Eastern and Central Africa and will act as a pilot for the setting up of other EIB regional hubs into the future. This speaks to our administration's agenda to position Nairobi as an international financial center. But an even better example of COVID resilience is the strengthened relationship between the national and county governments. Although the National and County Government Summit has operated smoothly since it became effective, I must admit that the COVID pandemic revitalized its energy. Whenever we gathered as a summit during this crisis, the consciousness of the entire nation was called to order. We put asunder the political dynamics of the moment, and our only business became Kenya. We demonstrated in word and in deed that devolution is a powerful driver of social economic development, and it creates synergies and acceleration points that in turn generates tangible benefits for all Kenyans. We understood very well that to overcome the crisis, we had to act as one. Rather than allowing the nation to succumb to COVID fatigue, we came together and galvanized our people towards strength, resilience, and building back better. Where others stumbled and fell, we rose and soared. During the COVID stress period, the national and county governments demonstrated their true leadership. Nothing demonstrates this better than the strengthening of our healthcare systems under the dark cover of the COVID-19 pressure. When the COVID pandemic hit our country, we had in ICU bed capacity only 180 beds countrywide. This translated to an average of 2 ICU beds in each county. But in the face of COVID, this reality was a disaster. But given the collaboration between the two levels of government, we increased ICU bed capacity by 502% during the COVID period. Equally important to note, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we had the capacity only to generate 3 million liters of oxygen per day in March of 2020. Today, I am proud to say that we have improved our oxygen generation capacity in public health facilities by 10 times to 32 million liters per day as of October 2021. Kenya can be proud of one more innovation. In March of 2020, we had only one laboratory that could test notifiable diseases of international concern. In fact, we had to send our tests for notifiable diseases to South Africa. When the COVID pandemic hit our country, we had to wait 5 days for the South African laboratories to send us results. Today, we have moved from one testing laboratory to 95 well-equipped laboratories. What is it then that we have learned from the COVID disaster? We have learned that our solutions must be homegrown. That is why we have commissioned a vaccine development project for disruptive viruses like COVID-19 to serve not only Kenya, but the region at large. Mr. Speakers, another national reminder of the opportunities we seized during COVID-19 was the site of the Likoni Channel crossing in Mombasa. Previous scenes of Mombasa residents congested along the Likoni ferry are now a thing of the past. The iconic Likoni floating bridge, built in a record time of 6 months and opened to the public in December 2020, sees over 150,000 residents cross the channel on a daily basis in an orderly, safe, and secure manner. This has not only allowed for the efficient management of time and mobility across the channel, but significantly moderated the incidences of COVID-19 transmission and contributed to our overall disease mitigation strategy in the coastal region. Kenya has taken pride of place through this initiative, a first of its kind in the region, linking Liwatoni on Mombasa Island with Ras Bofu on the Likoni mainland, and we intend to adopt such innovative approaches and learning to deliver on similar challenges in our various sectors. In sum, Mr. Speakers, COVID was both a danger and an opportunity. But because we focused on the opportunity side of the crisis, now Kenya has developed the necessary infrastructure for rolling out the universal health coverage outreach. But of equal importance, our COVID innovations in the area of health have propelled us to a place where Kenya can become a destination for health tourism for the region and beyond. Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot end this COVID part of my address to Parliament without paying tribute to the people of Kenya for their commendable civic responsibility in the fight against COVID-19. While my administration provided leadership and action, our people supported us with self-sacrifice and civic duty. As you will recall, very early in the pandemic, I did warn our people that the government cannot police the morality of its citizens. I warned that in a war against an invisible enemy like COVID, our former way of life would have to be adapted to a new normal where every Kenyan was his or her neighbor's keeper. In this new normal, citizens do not fight for liberties, they scramble for survival. When I made this call for civic responsibility in the face of COVID, I also emphasized that responsibility is not a burden, but it is a civic duty. I pay tribute to our fellow citizens for being responsible members of our communities. And indeed, as our forefathers stressed time and time again, our greatest strength will always be our unity. Today, I'm happy to report that despite the challenges and immense pressures and limits on our way of life, Kenyans did rise to the task and acted responsibly. Where others were reluctant, Kenyans gladly sacrificed for the good of the whole. For that reason, we were able to bend the curve and prevent the worst case scenarios. And due to this, and after careful consideration, during the Mashujaa Day celebrations, I lifted the curfew and restriction of movement countrywide. Once again, as we have always done, we have shown that Kenyans are a people who put country above self, neighbor above individual, and we are a people who firmly believe in exercising our rights and freedoms in a responsible and purposeful manner. While a few battles have been won, the war against COVID is not yet won, and we cannot rest on our laurels. Now more than ever, we are faced with yet another variant of this coronavirus, the Omicron variant that is said to carry a higher risk of infection. This variant may explain infection rate spikes that we are witnessing across the globe. I did pledge to the nation in June of this year that by Christmas, we would have over 10 million adults vaccinated. As of today, we have achieved a target of 7.1 million Kenyans, up from 5 million as announced on Mashujaa Day in October 2020. Mr. Speakers, to fortify our national resolve against COVID-19 and in honor of all those Kenyans that we have lost to the disease, I do urge today all Kenyan adults to visit their nearest medical facility to receive their COVID-19 vaccinations. The COVID-19 vaccines are in stock across our country and in all our counties, and already with a daily average rate of over 100,000 vaccinations, we have a much smaller target to meet within the next 25 days. I therefore once again call on all Kenyans to rally under the call of 25 days to Christmas to secure their vaccinations, to meet and surpass the target that we set ourselves. And I invite the media in all its various forms to use their platforms to perform the social good and promote the vaccination campaign. This new variant's profile, as for now, remains unknown. It is therefore better to err on the side of caution. By receiving our vaccinations, we will have played our part in securing not only our own lives, but also in protecting the lives of those around us. Let us be responsible in this endeavor. That shot in the arm is the most powerful weapon against the disease that has ravaged the world. That shot in the arm of every adult Kenyan will also be a shot in the arm for our economy and our social institutions. It ensures that we can conquer, that if we can conquer and put this disease aside and fully return to normal, we can continue on our growth trajectory. No Kenyan should hold back from this perfectly safe and free way to protect yourself, your family, your neighbors, your colleagues, and the nation at large. Let us tear down this disease, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Speakers, throughout our history, the collective task of nation building has been guided by the shared aspirations of eradicating the indignities of ignorance, disease, and hunger. This was the vision that fueled our struggle for independence. Post-independence, every Kenyan generation and every administration since has sought to do all within its means to finally slay the three-headed monster that has plagued us for over many centuries. To steer the nation towards a path for the realization of these aspirations, the people of Kenya entrusted the responsibility of actualization of that vision on the elected and appointed state officials and officers to whom the powers of our nation have been delegated to. These elected appointed state officers include 47 governors, 350 members of the National Assembly, 67 members of the Senate, and 2,240 members of the county assemblies. We are many, but we must act as one. One government of Kenya that acts in unison to give the people of Kenya a better present and a brighter future. Our collective contributions to move the nation closer to our destiny of a more fair, just, and equitable Kenya for all builds on the intentions of previous administrations as supported by the Houses of Parliament and the organs of the state. I say this fully aware of the enormous work, that this enormous work cannot be concluded in one generation. Ours is a relay race where we receive the baton and run the race and pass it on to our successors unbroken. Mr. Speaker, sirs, the most notable intergenerational quest is what inspired the Big Four agenda as a strategic guide for my second term in office. To do so, my administration and our colleagues in both tiers of government had to make commitments towards a transformation in 4 key areas of intent. The first one is liberating our people from the poverty of dignity caused by inadequate services. The second is transitioning our people, especially our youth, from being recipients of handouts to producers of goods and services, as well as owners of capital. The third is building a holistic base of human capital that is food secure and health assured. And the fourth is the restoration of the dignity and the pride inherent of one owning a decent home. Mr. Speakers, I will now give an account of what my administration has done not only in the last year, but what we have attempted to do in the last 8 years as well. And I will use the last 8 years to give this august Houses a scale against which everything that my administration has achieved is to be measured. I will use history as a yardstick that we can borrow from to appreciate the achievements of our 2 tiers of government and our objective of delivery. The first area of thrust that I will report on is the state of our economic development. And I will borrow from the 4 legacy frames I articulated in my Madaraka Day speech of June 30th, 2020 in Kisumu City. Under the state of our economic development, I will report on 2 frames that have guided me and my administration. These are economic acceleration and the big push investments. Allow me, honorable members, to start with economic acceleration, which is increasing the speed of achieving our economic goals. I also use the word acceleration to imply the mechanism of multiplying our economic fundamentals. When my administration took office in April of 2013, we were eager to multiply what was bequeathed to us. And I am happy to report to this Parliament that we have multiplied our critical fundamentals in ways that even I did not imagine possible. For instance, in 2013, Kenya was Africa's 12th wealthiest nation with a GDP of 4.74 trillion Kenya shillings. This GDP was accumulated in a span of 123 years through 4 administrations before ours, because I include the colonial administration. In just 8 years, my administration has multiplied the GDP by a factor of 2+. Today, our GDP stands at Kenya shillings 11 trillion, up from the 4.75 trillion, and from being ranked as the 12th wealthiest nation in Africa when I took over, we have now moved 6 ranks to become the 6th wealthiest nation in the continent on account of the choices that we have made. And as I said earlier, in the second quarter of this year, our real GDP grew by 10.1%, the first such growth in the history of our economy. The notable contributions to this growth include the ICT sector, which grew by a significant 25.1% in the second quarter of 2021. In fact, the ICT sector is projected to become a prime mover of our economic growth in years to come. Other sectors that contributed significantly to the real GDP in the reference quarter include the transport sector, which grew by 16.9%, and manufacturing, which grew by a record 9.6%. However, the hotel industry presents a more compelling picture of recovery from the COVID menace. At the height of the COVID pandemic in 2020, this industry registered a negative growth of 63.5% in the third quarter of 2020. During the first quarter of 2021, this industry showed some improvement and contracted by 48.8%. By the second quarter of 2021, this industry was on a path of recovery and had grown by 9.1%, showing a remarkable upturn. Here, I look forward to all our international and global partners. COVID will not be defeated by locking us all down and by shutting off parts of the world that you think are problematic. No one will be safe from COVID until we are all safe. Please, jameni, tumefanya kazi, msitufungie tena jameni. Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, given that we have doubled our GDP in a record 8 years, it is no wonder that Kenya is projected to grow twice as fast as the sub-Saharan economies in the period of 2021 to 2022. And all this because of leadership and the power of choice. Allow me to give further example of acceleration and the multiplication of our fundamentals as a strategic intent of my administration. A case in point is that we have doubled our real GDP. We have also doubled our road network across the entire republic. Besides the roads infrastructure, my administration has made the largest infrastructure project in a century with the construction of the standard gauge railway. In respect of roads infrastructure, when my administration came to the helm, there were 11,200 kilometers of tarmac road constructed by 4 previous administrations in 123 years. Like I said, I include the colonizers as well. In 8 years, my administration has multiplied what the previous administrations have done by a factor of 2. We have built 10,500 kilometers of road across the republic, and doing so 15 times faster than previous administrations, and I will expound on this in a little while. Our railway, on the eve of the Madaraka Day of the year 2017, we marked a transformative moment for Kenya and for Africa when the Madaraka Express made its inaugural journey from Mombasa to Nairobi. The largest infrastructure project in Africa had become a reality, and a brand new modern railway had become a feature of our homeland and nation. Since then, the way we travel to Mombasa has been redefined, with Madaraka Express having served over 6,495,000 passengers, while our cargo gets to the stores of our enterprises efficiently and on time, with a record of 17.6 million tons of cargo transported from the 1st of January 2018 to yesterday, the 29th of November 2021. Turning to power generation, our acceleration model was applied to the production and distribution of electricity countrywide. When I took the oath of office in 2013, Kenya's total grid was 1,300 megawatts. But 8 years later, Kenya's total grid has doubled and now stands at 2,600 megawatts. And this translates to approximately 325 megawatts installed every year under my administration. It means that for every year, we have installed 325 megawatts since 2013. Previous administrations installed a combined average of only 12 megawatts per year. Put differently, in 8 years, we have generated 40 times more power per year compared to the past. It is worth noting, honorable members, that 73% of this power is green. In fact, Kenya is leading the African continent in the generation of green energy. But this is not the only thing in Kenya. It's not the only thing which Kenya is leading the continent. I am proud to report that we have connected more power than in any other part of the country in just 6 years. In fact, Kenya is the leading country in Africa with respect to household connection electricity. In the 8 years, we have connected 1.7 million more homes. No, sorry, we have connected 1.7 million more households than Egypt. Similarly, we have connected as many households as South Africa and Nigeria combined during the 8 years of my administration. In real terms, only 2.3 million households had been connected to power when I took over in 2013. In 8 years, we have tripled this number by connecting an extra 6.3 million households. Put differently, and guided by our acceleration model, we have connected approximately 787,000 households every year on average, and with 2,000 connections a day since 2013. By any measure, this acceleration is noteworthy. Besides access to electricity, my administration has embarked on implementing the recommendations of the Presidential Task Force that established a pathway for the reduction of the cost of electricity by 30% by the end of this year. Mr. Speaker, we are tearing down all barriers that deny Kenyans an opportunity to lead a dignified life. Now I turn to devolution and how my administration has used the acceleration framework to multiply the economic fundamentals of the counties. As the first president to implement the 2010 Constitution, the task of rolling out devolution fell squarely on me. And although the letter of the Constitution provided for a phased approach to the devolution of functions to counties, the spirit of the Constitution suggested an urgent Big Bang approach in creating the devolved structures. This meant giving county governments political, administrative, and financial autonomy all at once. And we were to do this without the luxury of a strategy, dry run, to determine whether the Big Bang approach would work. Fortunately, Article 187 of the Constitution gave us 3 years to execute this constitutional instruction. While 3 years was a fair period to achieve the Big Bang effect of transferring functions to fragile counties, my administration chose an even bolder path. Driven by our acceleration doctrine, we chose to transfer functions to the county structures in 1 year instead of the constitutional threshold of 3 years. And because we were committed to the success of the county's structures, we followed our accelerated devolution of function with 2 critical drivers. One, we undertook a massive transfer of highly skilled civil servants from the national government to the county governments. And this battery of highly trained personnel was meant to give county governments a head start. And they did so in terms of setting up the county public services, including their operating structures and systems. Two, within the first year of my tenure, my administration increased the equitable share allocation to county governments from the constitutionally mandated 15% to 32%. This was a doubling of the allocation in support of the execution of the devolution dream. And we did this because we understood and appreciated that devolution of functions without devolving of funding was an exercise in futility. Today, the national government has disbursed approximately 2.4 trillion to county governments over the last 8 years. The aggregate amount that will have been dispersed to the counties for the next financial year will ensure that this figure surpasses the 3 trillion mark. In other words, this percolation of resources changed the economic fundamentals at the county level. It has fast-tracked the embeddedness of devolved functions in 8 years, and evidence abounds on this, but allow me to give a few examples. Accelerated devolution has, for instance, delivered shoes with a magical label made in Kitui County, Kenya, and given Makueni County its first mango processing plant. Makueni County received 110 million from the Devolution Advice and Support Program. This money supported the processing plant and benefited 12,000 mango farmers by creating value addition. That plant is now buying one mango at 15 shillings from farmers who previously sold their produce in the open marketplace at 5 shillings at the very best. Other than let their mangoes rot away. Their incomes have grown tenfold and provided ground for their farming undertakings to take off. Makueni is also on record as being one of the counties with the capacity to manufacture its own oxygen, especially in the context of COVID-19. And their universal healthcare insurance scheme, known as Makueni Care, is also a good example. Another example of county innovation is in Kajiado. In the wake of COVID-19 pandemic, the county looked for a way of distributing food to members of its populace through an integrated system dubbed M-Riziki, which virtually linked financiers and beneficiaries. 30,000 households of their population in Kajiado were able to receive food using the system in 2020. M-Riziki saved the county the logistical nightmare of transportation, and the digital platform also ensured that shopkeepers who partnered with the county were to provide goods remained in business during the COVID duress. This innovative approach in distributing relief food closed off avenues of corruption and created highly efficient ways of delivering services to the population. Honorable members, there are many more testimonials on how accelerating the formation of county structures and supporting them with skilled personnel, resources, and legislation has embedded devolution in the last 8 years. Once sleepy towns across the country have now roared back into life, driving not just grand infrastructure projects, but also tangible increases in household incomes of ordinary Kenyans. Mr. Speakers, as devolution takes root, and as an affirmation of the equitable development we continue to enjoy, and in keeping with the resolution of the Senate, I will tomorrow, the 1st of December 2021, have the high privilege of conferring on Nakuru Municipality city status. Nakuru City will join Kisumu, Mombasa, and Nairobi as cities, and with their reputation as East Africa's cleanest town, all of Kenya looks forward to Nakuru City growing by leaps and bounds. So, honorable members, I am happy to report to this august House that my administration has laid a firm and sound foundation for the devolved system of government, a foundation that has the potential to multiply the economic fundamentals of our county economies immeasurably. Ladies and gentlemen, you may ask why we choose to accelerate certain goals in our development agenda. Why do we choose to accelerate the issuance of title deeds, double our road network, build brand new railway lines, double our power production, double our GDP? Why has my administration taken such tremendous strides in creating accelerated development? Honorable members, it took England 200 years to industrialize. It took the United States of America 160 years, and Japan 110 years. However, we look not to these nations, but to China, which has compressed their progressive economic change experience by these countries into a single generation. Instead of taking 200 years, instead of taking the 200 years it took England to industrialize, China took only 25 years. Similarly, the four Asian tigers of Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, and the Republic of South Korea took 25 years to industrialize instead of the hundreds of years it took others. And that is why their accelerated growth was called the Asian miracle. The secret to these miracles was acceleration. The Asian tigers, for instance, accelerated the achievement of its critical development fundamentals, and this allowed them to industrialize at a rate that was faster than normal. They contracted their development timelines by implementing aggressive interventions on multiple sectors of their economies simultaneously. This reduced the intervals between the phases of industrialization and allowed them to catch up with the West. And like these countries, the policy choices of my administration have been about contracting our development timelines through aggressive implementation of projects. We are moving with speed because there is no time like the present to deliver the dreams of Kenyans for a better tomorrow. If the acceleration model has worked for the Asian tigers, who were at the same level of development as Kenya in 1965, they can work for us too. And if these countries industrialized in 25 years because of bold choices they made, we too can set the path for economic transformation and achieve it in record time, especially if we stop stealing. Mr. Speaker, allow me to report on the second frame of my development agenda, which I referred to in my Madaraka Day speech of this year as the big push investments. These are the bold undertakings that are futuristic in outlook. Most of these interventions are in the form of roads, rail, and ports. Some of them are revival of dead capital installed by previous administrations, which are nonetheless critical to our development path today. Regarding roads, the handiwork of my administration is evident across the entire country. There are some counties that have received their first tarmac roads since God made Kenya. And this was done during my administration. And as I said earlier, in 8 years, we have built approximately the same number of kilometers of road that were built by the colonizers and the 3 previous independent administrations. And although our achievements in this area cannot be gainsaid, I want to reiterate that my administration was not building roads for their own sake. Ours was a quest to lay down tarmac not for statistical purposes only. We realized that roads are literally the path to development, and that every inch of tarmac we lay We are accelerating businesses, creating the foundation for greater individual and national prosperity. We did it for you, the Kenyan people, to tear down the barriers that hold back every citizen from making their individual contributions to nation building. Take as an example the 27-kilometer Nairobi Expressway. Once completed next year, it will take 24 minutes to drive from Mlolongo in Machakos County to Rironi in Kiambu County. Currently, this journey takes 3 hours, which is the equivalent of flying to Addis Ababa and back to Kenya. Let me add that plans for the dual carriageway from Rironi, where the Nairobi Expressway will terminate, to Mau Summit are also at an advanced stage. And once completed, it will take 45 minutes to drive from Nairobi to Naivasha. Across the Republic, in every region, we are converting dusty Maram roads to world-class roads. Our dream is to create an efficient road network that links towns, cities, ports, stations, and markets to consumers. Over the last 8 years, and for the first time since independence, Kenya is now linked to 4 of its 5 neighbors by tarmac roads. This is how we are facilitating the economic integration of our region, tearing down every barrier to the realization of our shared aspirations as a people. For instance, by linking our road networks to the Northern Corridor, we are plugging into the multimodal trade route that links the landlocked countries of the Great Lakes region with the Kenya Maritime Seaport of Mombasa. Similarly, the East African Coastal Corridor Development Project will link us along the coastline from Malindi through to Lunga Lunga up to Bagamoyo in Tanzania and on to Dar es Salaam. The corridor will promote tourism and trade along the Indian Ocean coast. Of equal note is the Siarare Corridor, which will form an integral link to the Northern Corridor. Sudan at Nakadok. With regard to ports, the development of Lamu Port has been of particular pride to my administration. The port was first conceptualized in 1972, 9 years after we gained independence. However, it took 39 years for works on the Port of Lamu to commence. Through our futuristic model of big push investment, we have made it a reality in only 8 years. The Port of Lamu is the only post-colonial seaport in Africa built and financed by an African government. All other major seaports were built in the late 1800s or 1900s when most of Africa was under colonial rule. This port is therefore significant in terms of the futuristic thinking of our country. We are also in the process of building a road from Lamu through to Garissa and Isiolo, linking up to the Isiolo-Moyale road and opening up the Port of Lamu and the huge potential that exists in northern Kenya and with our partners also in Ethiopia. End of part 1. Interval. Hi. Honorable speakers, honorable members, because of the sheer depth and breadth of this port, it has the potential to reorganize the world's shipping networks by becoming a transshipment hub in Africa. Transshipment hubs are ports that allow large vessels that are unable to access destined ports of call due to their size. There are only 5 transshipment hubs globally, and the Port of Lamu has the potential, honorable members, of becoming the 6th. If we remain focused on our development agenda, this will become a reality sooner than later. There is another strategic niche in the Port of Lamu that is also futuristic. This port is placed right in the middle of the manufacturing hub of the Asia continent in the east and the heart of consumption in the west. The distance, honorable members, for example, between Shanghai, the manufacturing hub of the east, and Rotterdam, a major consumption port in the west, is approximately 12,000 nautical miles. But the distance between Rotterdam and Lamu is only 6,000 nautical miles. If we were to make the coastal region an outsourced manufacturing hub for Western products, the Port of Lamu has the potential to cut the price of these products by half. And this would be based purely on shipping costs, because the Port of Lamu is half the distance to the west compared to the Port of Shanghai. If we are to see the Port of Lamu through these futuristic lenses, we will exploit our geographical advantages to make an imprint on global trade. Another big push investment that we have made in support of regional trade through our ports is the expansion of the Kipevu oil refinery and oil terminal. For 128 years, Kenya has served the 5 countries of the region using only one oil berth at the Kipevu oil terminal. This single oil berth could only handle 1 vessel at a time, and for the most part, it took 1 vessel days to offload its fuels. This meant that other vessels in the queue to offload had to wait, incurring huge demurrage charges and penalties by oil marketers. The resultant cost of these inefficiencies are borne by the Kenyan consumer, which overall makes our economy uncompetitive. This year alone, we lost an average of 1 billion shillings in the first 4 months in demurrage at the old Kipevu oil terminal. To tear down the barriers that make our country uncompetitive, we have now put in place a new oil terminal that I shall be opening soon, that will accommodate up to 4 vessels at a time, and instead of taking a whole day of loading fuel, each of the 4 vessels will take 5 hours to offload their fuel cargo. This means that every terminal will have the capacity to handle over 20 vessels a day. Put differently, if the old terminal handled 300 fuel vessels per year on average, the new terminal has the capacity to handle 7,300 vessels annually. Coupled with the improved transportation system connecting Kenya with its neighbors, the expanded capacity will boost our regional trade as well as remove the cost of demurrage and penalties that the Kenyan consumer has to pay. Mr. Speaker, one of my administration's key priorities has also been to revive state undertakings that have been designated as dead capital. I have done this as part of our big push investment because the utility of these state undertakings could not be allowed to go to waste. To increase the speed of reviving this dead capital, I elected to use the Kenya Defence Forces because of their unity of command, military efficiency, and reasonable pricing. As an example, after KDF took over the Kenya Meat Commission, they turned it around in just a few months. Whereas previously, it took farmers 4 years to be paid, they are now paid in 72 hours. KMC has resuscitated the outlets that KMC have, collecting today approximately 1 million shillings every day. Previously, this outlet collected 8,000 shillings daily. Mujiulize hiyo pesa ingine ilikuwa inaenda wapi? This 1 million translates to 30 million every month and Kenya shillings 3.6 billion annually in just one outlet. Before September 20th, such revenue would have been impossible because slaughtering was limited to a few or no animals in a month. To enhance further the profitability of KMC, we have linked it to another dead capital that my administration has revived, the meter gauge railway from Nairobi to Nyanyuki, which has been revived under the KDF. The KMC is now using it to transport more than 200 animals weekly. Another aspect of the KMC re-engineering supply chain is a relationship with the Wasinyiro South Development Authority. This authority has a tannery and leather factory, which the KMC has been supplying with hides and skins. Although the factory is still not yet complete, it has so far produced about 840,000 square feet of finished leather, partly from KMC supplies. And once complete, it is expected to produce over 1.2 million square feet of finished leather per year. Apart from the revival of KMC, the Nairobi-Nyanyuki Railway, in partnership with the Kenya Railway Corporation and KDF, has revamped the 217-kilometer Nairobi-Kisumu Railway, a railway that had been abandoned for over 2 decades. But today, it now boasts 18 stations, 46 bridges, and 27 viaducts. Together with the revival of the port of Kisumu, revamping the railway line is meant to enhance connectivity with our neighboring countries who depend on Kenya for their transportation of their imports and exports. Another uplifting story of revival of dead capital is our big push investment in the port of Kisumu and the reconditioning of MV Uhuru vessel. To transport fuel prior by road from Kisumu or Eldoret to Uganda took 72 hours because of the long queues at the Malaba border. But to transport fuel from the port of Kisumu to Port Bell in Uganda by ship takes only 12 hours. This means that by the time a tanker makes one trip to Uganda by road, MV Uhuru will have made 6. There is the question of volume. One tanker carries 20,000 liters of fuel, but one wagon abroad, MV Uhuru, carries 60,000, which is 3 times the size of a tanker. Secondly, for all our customers in Uganda and through to the DRC, issues of losses that used to amount to approximately 10% and issues of adulteration, imeisha. Yeah? To date, we have transported over 80 million liters of fuel across Lake Victoria to Uganda. Mr. Speaker, my administration has set in motion the process of reviving the blue economy. A blue economy strategy is set to reclaim all fish landing sites is in place, and we have set up a Coast Guard to secure our maritime assets, and we have come up with a legal framework that will ensure that all fish caught in Kenyan waters are landed in Kenya. It is worth for Parliament to note that in the 1990s, Kenya used to process 5% of the global loin tuna catch. This was produced by a company known as Wananchi Marine Products Limited, based in Liwatoni and Wambaz. When this company, for reasons, collapsed, Kenya's tuna was extracted by other countries and resold in foreign markets. Inability to export our tuna resources has seen Kenya lose a potential revenue of Kenya shillings 3 trillion since 1982, when the exclusive economic zone was set up by the United Nations. And to revive this dead capital, my administration formed the Kenya Fishing Industries Corporation in 2019 to regulate the exploration of Kenya's maritime and fish products. This corporation took over from the defunct Wananchi Marine Products, and it is in the process of setting up marine landing sites and processing plants in Lamu, Chimoni, and Livatoni. Once fully operational, the goal is to land 300,000 metric tons of tuna every year and to employ a workforce of approximately 60,000 people. This industry has the potential to rake in for Kenya 200 billion shillings. Overall, as we seek to improve our infrastructure, our commitment to sustainable development is uncompromising. It is a solemn duty of present generations to consciously conserve their natural beauty, ecological splendor, and pristine environment that we received from our forefathers and from generations before them. And this to pass on to future generations in as a good state as we can, unbroken as it was given to us, if not in better condition. In this regard, I note with satisfaction that our Greening Kenya campaign continues to gain momentum, and as a result, approximately 71,794 kilometers squared of our homeland is currently constituted of tree cover, representing 12.12%, while 52.279 kilometers squared of our country is under forest cover, which represents 8.83, up from 6% previously. Mr. Speakers, we are indeed on course to meet our target of 10% forest cover by the year 2024. For trees are without doubt the lungs of our nation. Mr. Speakers, now I turn to the third frame, which I have used to organize the achievement of goals in my administration. I call it the restoration of dignity, and it is a campaign against the three enemies identified by our forefathers, that of ignorance, poverty, and disease. The founding fathers of our nations defined dignity as freedom from want and freedom from fear. They taught us that there is no self-rule where there is no self-worth. And under this frame, I will report on the state of our water, health, education, and security sectors. Where there is no access to clean drinking water, there is no dignity. And that is why my administration prioritized and succeeded in providing 35 million people with access to clean water. When I took office in 2013, our entire country was served by just 99 public boreholes. In the past financial year alone, we have managed to sink 262 public boreholes, and today more than 2,511 public boreholes have been sunk since 2013, a 25-fold increase in the previous number of boreholes. In order to continue this widening of access to clean water, my administration has over the years invested over 200 billion to implement various dams and other integrated community projects that will increase water supply to vulnerable communities. In the Nairobi metropolitan area alone, the project is set to supply 41.3 million liters of water per day to an additional 2.1 million residents. This is critical because the poverty of dignity is most pronounced in water-scarce economies of the informal settlements and in vulnerable communities. For instance, as is known by some members here, the average daily consumption of water per household in informal settlements in Nairobi is 40 liters. If the price of 40 liters is 40 shillings, a household will have to spend 1,200 shillings per month buying water alone. This is 20% of the income of an average family in most of our informal settlements. And for the most part, the price of water has been higher than that of rent. The poverty of dignity is well illustrated when one considers that the price of water for the rest of Nairobi is Kenya shillings 46 per 1,000 liters. Put differently, the dwellers of our informal settlements have been paying 25 times more for water compared to the rest of Nairobi dwellers. And this is why the Nairobi Metropolitan Service has set up 1,600 water points in all our informal settlements to supply free water to the residents. This initiative has saved dwellers of these settlements up to 20% of their incomes and approximately 1,200 shillings per household. And this is what I call freedom from want. Mr. Speaker, one of the most indignifying challenges of our people has been the high cost of healthcare. There are many testimonies of how families have had to sell ancestral land to cater for high medical bills. This not only rips them of their dignity, but also deprives future generations of ancestral address. The objective of my administration is to end this by providing 100% universal health coverage for essential health services by starting this year. The constitutional right to health care is the element that my administration has been consistently working to fulfill by investing in health facilities, medical equipment, and human resources for health. Our success in this area has been lauded internationally. According to Healthcare Index, which gives a single measure of the state of each country's health system based on data provided by the World Health Organization, Kenya today ranks third behind South Africa and Tunisia among the most improved health systems in Africa in the year 2020. To achieve this, my administration has had to work to increase affordability and availability of healthcare services for all Kenyans. Access speaks to the geographical availability of healthcare facility services, affordability to both the cost of healthcare services and the ability of Kenyans to pay for these medical services. And availability speaks to the extent to which our healthcare facilities have the necessary resources to meet the health needs of Kenyans. In terms of access to healthcare, when my administration took over in 2013, the number of health facilities across the country stood at 4,430. My administration, in conjunction with county governments, has increased our medical facilities by 43% by building an additional 1,912 new hospitals in the last 8 years. This is an average of 239 new facilities per year. In context, in previous 118 years, only 4,430 hospitals had been built in Kenya, an average of 37 hospitals per year. We have built, during that period, 6 times more hospitals than over all the 4 previous administrations. To increase access to specialized medical services and to decongest Kenyatta National Hospital,